I'm excited. I've got a specific question I want to ask Destiny.
Oh
all
boy.
right, well,
Well,
just hold.
here I am.
All right, hold on. Let me read these.
No, I'll hold off on it.
Jack says the UNS review. Is it UNS review or UNZ review? I don't know. I always say it
Uns.
wrong. UNS. It is UNS. Okay, that's what
Ron Uns runs it. Yeah.
Okay. The UNS review is featuring Eric Stryker's columns. FYI, White Iverson just subscribed for a month, and every time I see his name, I start hearing the song from Post Malone. But thank you. Pits of Cowboy says, "I am a serial noticer. I note many coincidences." Oh, here we go. King Porgy. King Porgy said,
Here we go.
TRS gang, rise up. The right stuff. The right stuff.biz, baby. King Porgy also subscribed for a month. All right. We'll get to super chats again a little quicker than we did last night, since some of them like to just disappear here on D Live, which I don't understand. But I don't run this website, unfortunately. As we found out last weekend, I don't run this website. Anyway, so both Eric Stryker and Destiny have been on this stream within the last, 5-6 months. Destiny was back on in January to speak with Mike Enoch. But as is tradition here on the Kill Stream, I always let the guests introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Destiny. Why don't you introduce yourself to the Kill Stream audience?
Hey, I'm Destiny. I do politics on Twitch. I'm a huge SJW/libcuck. I also do politics on YouTube. So I play video games. So that's about it.
I think that's pretty.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Stryker. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Stryker. I'm a journalist, a cultural critic. I have a page called National-Justice, and I do a radio show with Mr. Mike Enoch every Tuesday called Strike and Mike on the rightstuff.biz.
There we go. Now, we usually have some type of opening statements here. Now, most of this is going to be you guys questioning each other. We do have a few questions here or there, but you know how we do it on the Kill Stream. I guess I will let you start off, Stryker, with your opening points here.
Okay, so my opening point is that, nationalism is the solution. And what I mean by nationalism is third positionism, inspired indeed by the European populisms of the 1930s and 20s. I also believe that America has many problems ranging from economic to social. I think that the basic premise of what I'm saying is that people of European descent in America, a nation that is an extension of Europe and has always been considered an extension of Europe, and not just America, but also all the New World European homelands, whether it's Canada, whether it's Australia, with its Anglo-Celtic culture, Canada with its Franco-British culture, Argentina and Uruguay with their Italian and Iberian cultures. These are unique nations, all being attacked by mass immigration and neoliberalism. My intent in this debate is to de-radicalize Destiny from his neoliberal worldview, which has killed tens of millions of people. Today, neoliberal Zionists are basically planning to kill 3 million Iranians. So I want Destiny to be able to rationalize why in the Second World War, when Britain and France declared war on Germany, 50 million people had to die. Why in Iraq, 500,000 children under the age of 5 had to die because of sanctions, where Madeleine Albright, the biggest neoliberal of the 90s and the Clinton administration, said it was worth it. I want to know how all of this can be justified just so people can have their illusion of liberal individualist maximalism. And of course, so Wall Street can dictate the terms of the world down to where you live, down to what your community looks like, down to how your religion is practiced, everything. So that's just my opening statement.
All right, Destiny, go ahead, sir.
I don't think liberalism wants to dictate any of those things to you. The idea that American is seen as an extension of Europe and always has been is pretty comical to me, considering that American exceptionalism has defined like the idea of America over the past 200 plus years. And the idea that
What language are
any
you
of these-
speaking right now?
Wait.
Chill,
Let
yeah.
him go.
pardon.
The idea that we're going to fix like any of the major problems that are facing anybody in the world today by pretending that we just need to put more European ethnic people in one area is comically fucking stupid. And I guess we can talk about economic policy or foreign policy if you want as a part of that. And you're hilariously misinformed if you think I'm going to come on here and defend every single foreign policy blunder that the United States has ever committed, like the Iraq War, or pretend that that was a result of immigration or some Jewish conspiracy, I guess. You pretty much covered almost like the last 100-year time span, so I don't know which parts we're going to talk about in particular. I guess I'm generally more concerned with like current day affairs, but we could talk a little bit of history if you want. Yeah, I don't know where you want to start.
All right, yeah, I was going to say, go ahead, Striker. Now, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, pardon me for interrupting.
That's okay.
First of all, let me question your premise that America is not an extension of Europe. When you go to an opera house, where do the operas come from? They come from Italy and Germany. When you go see a symphony, whether you're in New York City or Pittsburgh or Los Angeles, where does the music come from? Who are the composers? They're Italians and Germans and Russians.
What are the most popular forms of music that America is known to export to the world?
Yes, and that's not
That's
culture.
rock and roll, hip hop, rap. Where do these come from primarily? So this is a
That's
total.
not-
This is a
That
loser
is not
topic. You
high,
have
that is
to go
not
to
high culture.
you
That's
have
not high
to go to
culture.
another subject besides music because it is the worst example you could have picked. Like jazz is one of the most important contributions that America's made on the world stage. To
Jazz
music.
is a bastardization of the waltz.
I-
That's what jazz
No,
music.
Wait, would you say that every single form of art is a bastardization of the art that it was derived from? You realize that every single, like, would you say that Romanticism was a bastardization of classical music, or that classicalism was a bastardization of Baroque music, or that Baroque was a bastardization of the
So
monophysite?
you're saying
this
so you're
is
saying
a
rap,
ridiculous.
So you're saying rap music is an evolution of classical music. Is that what you're saying? It's an update of it. Is it better? I mean, objectively.
Whoa,
Is
whoa,
rap-
whoa,
I
whoa,
mean,
whoa, whoa.
I
Just because
don't
art is
mind rap
derivative-
music,
Well, no,
but
no.
let's sit here
Hold on.
and
You-
think
you-
about what you just said.
No,
Classical
you don't-
music.
Wait.
It's like the worst topic you could have stumbled on. Like I'm literally a music major. Like dog, like this is the
Just
worst
because you
possible
say
thing you
it's
could
the
have
worst
chosen.
topic doesn't mean that what you're saying is true.
Well, no, it's the worst topic
Okay.
because all music is derivative based on prior music. The most important musical contributions that America has made to the world, like the origins of like rock and roll and rap and blues, like a lot of these things were inspired by African Americans, which are not European. This is literally some of America's most important contributions to the world musically. If you want to take some weird Ben Shapiro argument, which seems strange for you to do, about how rap isn't music, I mean, we can debate objectively like what you consider music. I guess we can talk about that, or we can talk about whether or not like music that comes after other music is like an update of it. I don't know if anybody would argue that romantic music is superior to classical music, or that impressionist music or serialism is superior to what came before it. Those are just ridiculous. Like you're begging the question when you say things like, is rap better than classical music? This doesn't make sense. It's not how you analyze art or music.
Would you put Moby Dick in the same category as Harry Potter?
I wouldn't that they're
In terms
both
of high literature?
Yeah, they're literature.
Do you think people are going to be reading Harry Potter 100 years from now like we read Moby Dick?
Nobody listens
No,
to
they're not.
opera now, dog. Literally,
No, they're
nobody
not.
cares about
We
opera.
don't-
What do you
okay,
mean?
listen.
What? Wait, no, wait. You're telling me like it's important to see what people are currently listening to? Do you think people are walking into opera houses? Ironically enough, the only people that do are probably the Jewish people that I'm sure you're going to spend the majority of this podcast attacking. Like, come on, dude. Who
Wait a
seriously
second.
is
Wait a second.
blasting classical music and their fucking Ford Focuses like driving down the street in their Honda Civics? Like, come on. You're not seriously going to make this argument to me.
Is jazz a lower derivative of the waltz?
What do you mean
Because
a
if
lower
you did-
derivative?
It's a simplification and a Judaized version of the waltz.
No,
It's the
there's
waltz
nothing.
without the order.
No. What
the-
waltzes are incredibly simplistic, harmonically speaking, compared to the rich textures that you can find in jazz. I mean, like, what are you talking about?
Come on.
Come on. No, hold on. I'm going to be fair to you. I think we
There's
should
no
move-
order. There's no order to jazz music.
What do you mean
There's
by
no
order? Define order.
Jazz music is not ordered like music.
What do you
It
mean by
doesn't
order?
have-
Define order.
It's made up on the go.
No, it's not.
Jazz music is made up on the go. That's
No,
why it
it's
sounds so
not.
stupid.
What are you talking about?
Jazz music is all.
That's not. First of all, it's not made up.
Atonal.
It's not atonal either. There is a tonal center to the majority of jazz music, and it's not made up on the go. Jazz music is highly structured. Maybe you're mistakenly referring to the idea that there are improvisation sections to a lot of jazz music, but guess what? To a lot, yes, a lot of the class. If you've actually listened,
right.
well, no. Having improvisational sections doesn't mean it's made up on the go. And also, a lot of classical music had improvisational sections as well, but people that listen to it, like you, that don't actually understand the origins of it, don't know that. A lot of the repeated passages that you hear in classical music, in the past, piano players would have actually been expected to improvise new passages there. But it doesn't happen anymore because classical music is seen as more of a museum than an actual modern day, like, evolution of music. So if you want to say that improvisation means that there's an order to it, that doesn't even work for you.
What are the foundations of American culture? Whether it's music, whether it's
By the way,
the crappy I mean, I don't like the liberal philosophy, but the philosophy of the United States was not created by African philosophers. It was created by European philosophers during the Enlightenment. Okay?
Now, before you answer,
fathers, go ahead.
Before you answer, Destiny, before you answer, I just want to say this. So somebody in chat said the real JQ is the jazz question. Go ahead.
So Stryker's American, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. That I'm just saying because I don't know what your health insurance is like. We don't have Medicare for all here. That pivot was actually so extreme. I'm worried you're going to injure yourself. So slow down, okay? If you want to talk about the foundations
What's
of
with
like,
the snark?
if you want to talk about,
why are you attacking me personally? I'm trying to have an adult conversation with you. You would not be talking to me like this in person. So I appreciate it if you just talk to me and we can exchange ideas like two fucking adults.
So
Stop
I live in LA.
I live in
LA. Ralph has been here. If you want to set up a real life debate, I'll do it any day of the week. Okay? I'm talking to people that are bigger and scarier than you. Okay?
I'm not going to LA right now.
Okay, that's fine. But don't sit here and pretend like I wouldn't talk to you in person. Like you're some big scary fucking dude. Okay?
You wouldn't be snarking and insulting me.
If
and
somebody
saying,
were to legitimately say to me, like in a straight face, to try to imply to me that jazz has no order, I would be just as snarky. It is a hilariously stupid fucking point. So yes, I would be. I'm just
asking you to be an adult. Calm down. Maybe get your girlfriend to change your nappy. Calm down. Maybe smoke some weed to take the edge off all the Adderall you just took. And then
I don't need Adderall to get fired up when a musically illiterate guy tries to lecture me about how jazz has no order. Okay.
Okay. So the guy that thinks rap is high culture is calling me musically illiterate.
I never said that rap was high culture. Do you think that you realize that musicians?
I'm talking about culture.
You realize that musicians in the 18th and 19th centuries and the 17th century, they were seen as not high culture, right? Like these people were treated like dirt.
That's
they were seen
not
as
true.
It absolutely is true. A lot of these guys, even people like Mozart, struggled to make ends meet. These guys were not revered people.
But that's a problem with the capitalist system that does not subsidize culture.
All that rapid capitalism under those monarchies.
Hold on. If you see countries that did subsidize culture, whether it's Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, whatever their flaws may be, they had Wagner playing outside of factories because it was paid for by the state in the Third Reich. In the Soviet Union, the famous composer Prokofiev, one of the most beautiful music that the world has ever seen, he came to America to try and make it. And because the clubs were all playing jazz, because it's for profit and there's no money for culture, he had to return to the Soviet Union. He was subsidized. And the only reason we know the name Prokofiev is because the Soviets subsidized their culture. I'm not pro-Soviet. I'm just saying that is a problem of good culture is not always going to be highly profitable in the short term. So that is a systematic problem.
So,
but regardless of that,
this is like a good focal point. Okay, let's back off a little bit. Okay, so this is a good kind of like testing ground, I guess, for our ideas for the rest of this conversation. When you say a lot of things where you're loading a lot of conclusions into just like simple questions like what is good culture or is this better than that? Just because something was good a long time ago doesn't mean it will be forever good. No culture and no form of art whether it's painting or music or plays or literature, has ever worked like that. We do not spend all of our time in the 1900s. They didn't exclusively play music from the 1800s. The 2000s, they didn't play in the 20th century. They didn't play things from the 19th century, and then the 2000s, we're not going to play things from the 20th century. That's just how culture and everything works. You know, if you want to talk to anime fans, they wouldn't tell you to just watch or whatever Evangelion like a million times because that used to, or Akira the movie over and over again. We watch newer stuff. If you're a fan of music, you're not going to listen to operas exclusively from the 1800s. It doesn't make sense. We don't have an ear for that anymore.
I'm not
Culture
saying
changes.
you have to listen to it exclusively. What I'm saying is that there's a reason why, if you go to your local Philharmonic, the tickets are still $60 or $70 for a seat in most places. And if you want to go see Good Charlotte, they can't even sell out the back room of a Denny's. There's a reason for that. Okay?
The reason is because rich middle-class assholes like to virtue signal to other rich middle-class assholes that they're cultured, because people like you think that listening to music that was written over 200 years ago somehow makes you a more informed consumer of music, which it doesn't. Like,
I mean, I'm not asking for the relativistic answer. Like, why? Where?
It's
I
not
don't
about a
disagree.
relativistic. You're trying to present this idea.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Sure. Okay.
I'm not asking. Listen. Again, let's calm down. Let's just talk like two civilized adults here, okay? The thing is, I agree that there's some pretentious people that maybe go to the opera or they go to see classical music because it's a status symbol. But why is that a status symbol and going to see Good Charlotte or Limp Bizkit isn't a status symbol? Why is that?
It is. It was for people that were teenagers or people that
today.
were
Why is it
today?
age so
Because
bad?
Good Charlotte is 15 years old. I mean, no one cares anymore, right?
Yes, and Beethoven is much older. But if someone,
but nobody cares about Beethoven either. People don't go to Beethoven concerts.
Clearly, people are willing to pay a lot of money to go see a Beethoven concerto.
Wait, this comparison is absurd. When you say a lot of money, do you think that more money has been moved in the last decade by Beethoven related stuff or by Kanye West? Like Blink 182 still sells out concerts.
You're right.
Like,
and that's a problem of capitalism, and it's also a problem of repetition because radio stations don't play Beethoven; they play Kanye West. And they just repeat that. You go to the supermarket, you're hearing Kanye West. You go to, you go to the gym, you're hearing Kanye West. We don't, it doesn't even make any sense because if you really want to run faster on the treadmill, how about you play a Prussian military march, right?
So
but
wait,
the thing is, like that, that is all by design because culture is a product of people, and culture is also a product of elites. The elites have decided to turn the people of America into culturally bankrupt people because people with no culture are people who are susceptible to become slaves, to become exploited. They can't fight back because they don't have the tools or the enlightenment to do it. That's why America is so chaotic. I mean, you look at what's happening in this country right now, and you see just how problematic our system is.
Are we good on the gift gallop here? I don't need like the whole cultural spiel. So everything.
Look who's talking. What the hell's with the freaking? What are you talking about? Gish galloping. I'm talking about.
You're like going off on this whole cultural
I'm
conspiracy.
talking about the origins of culture. Culture.
We're not talking about the origins of culture.
Cycles and civil. We are talking because you said America is not a European an extension.
No, we were
of Europe.
talking about music and why music is played in the stores. You're trying to pivot off of this subject because you realize how ill-informed you are.
Why America in 1960? Why the average American in 1960s America considered himself a European in the New World, and why an American in 2020 does not do so as much. The reason is because the top 200% of people, the gatekeepers of culture,
hold on, I haven't responded.
Have gone from becoming white men.
This isn't one of the podcasts, dog. So let's back way the fuck up, like 52 sentences ago. Okay, I don't know if you think you're like writing a blog post right now or what.
What are you calling me dog for, bro? I mean, come on. What do you?
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Stryker. Okay, my bad. I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
So, I'm not gonna call you fucking sir. No.
Okay,
no,
right,
fuck
go
that.
ahead.
We'll go with Eric. Okay. So
Oh,
you can't have it both ways and say, well, people actually prefer, like, I debate a lot of socialists and lefties that do this, where you're trying to say, like, well, actually, people really prefer these classical concerts. That's why they pay so much for the tickets. And then when I go, well, actually, that's not true at all. You go, oh, okay, well, you're right, but that's just because of capitalism. You see how you're trying to have it, like, every which way? Like, you're trying to simultaneously say that people have this preference for an arbitrary, by the way, a totally arbitrary selection of dates for music, right? Because we can go back over 1,000 years if you want to talk about different types of music, but you're saying that there's some 200-year span or 100-year span where people actually have a selection for, but for some reason capitalism is keeping them from having that selection, even though they really do. But
let me explain myself. I'll clarify this. In 1920s Germany, the most popular music was kind of jazzy and stuff like that. In 1930s Germany, the most popular music was Wagner. The reason for this, the reason tickets are so expensive to see a Wagner, to see a Beethoven concert, to see Prokofiev even, is because of capitalism. It's not available. The average person in America can't afford necessarily to go see one of these concerts. Like you said, it's only upper class people. You said this, upper class people tend to go to this because it's so expensive to see them. So what I would recommend is you subsidize real culture and people will go and see it and enjoy it. Working people deserve to have culture and transcendence just like rich people do. And the fact that we don't make that available to working people is something I disagree with from an ethical perspective.
This has to be, there is a incredibly small subset of people that are listening that are seriously considering these ideas. Like,
but they're not exposed to it.
Everybody is exposed to classical music. Everybody knows what
Where?
Moonlight
Where
Sonata
where
is.
can you go?
You hear it
you
in
get
cartoons.
It on the car radio?
You hear it in
at
cartoons.
your
You've
gym?
heard it in school. Like, everybody
Cartoons.
knows. Sure, yeah. Believe it or not, cartoons is an
Old
easy way
cartoons,
to.
maybe.
Sure, yeah.
Very
sure.
old cartoons.
Sure.
I mean, how many people are watching freaking cartoons from the 60s still? Not that many compared to people that watch.
We can
the
see
new
the
stuff.
types of music that people torrent on classical websites, or the types of music that people downloaded on Kazaa and Napster. There's not this massive thirst for classic and romantic era compositions like you seem to think there are among the normal, ordinary people. The reality is that people's musical tastes update over time, like your taste for all art, whether it's film, whether it's literature, whether it's music. It just changes over time. This idea that you want to fetishize some arbitrary selection of dates doesn't make any sense.
So if you consider high culture in a different category,
what does high culture mean to you? Why is that music high culture?
You don't know what great literature is. What is the canon of great literature?
No. Let's talk about music. Why do you think some music is high culture compared to other music? I'm curious.
You said what is high culture? Then I give you an example. And you say no. Let's talk about music.
Well, because we're talking about
high
music,
culture,
and you are bringing it up in relation to music, so I want to talk about music. So tell me, what does high culture music mean to you? I'm curious.
High culture is classical music. It's stuff like that.
Why? What makes it high culture?
What do you mean? What makes it high culture?
You realize that every argument you're giving now, that in like the romantic
music,
era,
that if you train your ear to listen to it, and it's almost like eating food, right? If you spend your whole life eating SpaghettiOs, you probably can't enjoy a better meal, right? Because your palate.
This is the argument that you want to make,
you have to train a man's palate for classical music in some cases.
No, you don't. Most
and
classical,
we don't do that in
this is not true. I encourage anybody right now listening to go and download any number of Mozart or even Haydn pieces. You can understand these and listen to these immediately. They're just boring.
Do you think they're great?
No, they're boring.
You find them boring? Okay.
Of course. Compared to the type of music that we have available today, the selection of instruments, our harmonic vocabulary has massively expanded compared to what they had in the 1800s and in the 1900s. Yeah, of course.
Massively expanded. So like some black guy talking fast over a 4/4 beat is considered massive expansion.
Is every beat just a 4? What do you think are the rhythms of most like classical songs? You talk about waltzes. Do you think the rhythms there in a waltz is complicated? Like you're making fun of a 4/4 beat, like, wow, you've got 3/4 and 6/8. Like, oh, it's so much more complicated.
What I'm saying is that what you say is an expansion. It's true that 4/4 beats were common in classical music, but there's also different other types of tempo. The point I'm making is that within the classical realm, there are many different types of doing classical music. You know, how many times? I mean, why do you think rock music is like basically played out now? Like, people don't listen to rock music anymore.
What are you
Part of
talking
it-
about? Progressive rock had like a pretty massive upswing
Sure,
in like the early 2000s.
I'm not.
Sure, like,
listen. Stop being pedantic. You know what
I'm
I
not
mean.
being pedantic.
Turn on
You're
the
just
you
making
turn
it
on the radio.
Oh, you want to
All right,
on the
look,
radio.
look. We can talk about music all show, and I actually didn't stop it because I'm entertained by this. Other people.
Well, sure. I just so like I'm
Yeah.
happy
Okay,
that we
let's
open.
finish-
let's
Sure, I'm happy
Finish
that we
up this segment. is
Yeah,
what
I
I'm saying.
understand.
Yeah,
I'm happy that we open with this topic so that I kind of have like an understanding of how absolutely disingenuous like every other cultural argument is going to be. Like this, like for anybody that's listening that has any musical background at all, everything you said is laughable. Like you talk about the necessity to train an ear to hear something. The amount of ear training required to follow like Coltrane's later pieces versus like fucking Mozart pieces is hilarious. Like you need so much more ear training to follow any complicated jazz composition. Like the harmonies in that are almost impossible to follow versus classical music. Like that's hilarious.
All right, now let me read these because they paid me to read them, and then I'll let Destiny, since the opening. I did not expect a 15-minute discussion on jazz when I.
Well, I mean, like they
started
literally
the show.
play Mozart to
It's
babies, and this guy's telling you need a developed
We
ear
should
for
get
it.
back to
Oh
the-
my
yeah.
god!
I thought it was interesting. That's why some people are like, oh, what are we talking about? Jazz. I mean, honestly, both you guys are fired up, so why would I stop that? Finally, I did have to stop it though. All right, let's keep going. Godzilla 37 says Striker won. I'll watch the rest for laughs. Patrice O'Neill Groiper says my rock came from blacks. Pensive Cowboy says bets on where the random freak out I'll use will start. King Porgy says NB4 excessive use of wait dudes. Professor Eric says this is awful. I disagree. I thought that was excellent actually. Terry J says hi guest. Would you rather? I'll get to that later. We'll work that in later. I know what your question is. Nicholas Diorio says what the fuck? This is so good. Yeah, I mean that was my view. Unitas the Goat says Destiny is actually kicking his ass. LOL. Racist says jazz music sounds like cats in a car wreck. Dave the Impaler says metal is modern classic music. All that matters. Racist. Subscribe for a month. The Real Tinchy. There we go. We got an agreement. The Real Tinchy says Stryker is making me embarrassed to be right wing. Professor Eric says change the subject, Ralph. This is so stupid. I don't really think that's a stupid argument that they had there, to be honest. Pensive Cowboy says reject Beethoven, embrace Gregorian Templar chants. Pensive Cowboy says hello, I'm your host, Rethan Alf. Welcome to NPR. It was more of an NPR type discussion there, I guess. Unitas the Goat, subscribe for a month. Thank you, sir. Professor Eric says the FBI isn't sending its best tonight. John says Hayden's rhythms are logical. Destiny is a moron. John then says classical music is pure fucking logic. Destiny. Tyrone 88 says Mozart 2016 best-selling CD. All right, now Destiny. I'll let you
Interesting.
ask.
I just want to point out that the ultimate irony of this entire last section about how elites are dictating what we want to listen to on the radio, when you're citing classical composers that literally these operas that you're talking about were commissioned by literal elites, literal royalty and noblemen for them to be written and played. And you're talking like if anybody here is pushing a message from the elites, it would be somebody telling us to listen to an opera that a fucking king or baron like literally commissioned from somebody to write for them.
Sure, but the point I was making, and I do want to, we can move on.
Sure, we can move on.
Please.
But I will finish with this. What I meant by elites is that the elites are the ones that control the radio stations, and they decide what the people hear, and then those very elites go and they can go to the Philharmonic to go listen to Beethoven.
Okay, I will agree with that, and I will concede that in the 1800s, the elites had less control of the radio stations. I will concede to that.
Oh, good one.
All right, go ahead, Destiny. Now it's your turn to offer a query. Hopefully not about jazz music, but I enjoyed that section. So,
I mean, we could talk about what are your economic positions? It sounds like you flirt with socialism a little, or what do we got here?
Yes, I am an anti-capitalist.
An anti-capitalist.
Yes.
So
a nationalist. Nationalism and socialism are interchangeable and cannot exist without one another.
Well, that's absolutely not true. But well, for the sake of the argument, we can talk about socialism if you want. So are you like a favor of like completely abolishing the profit motive? Do you want like the government to be in charge of central planning, or like what? I guess like what is your? I'm not trying to corny. I'm just curious. Like what does your ideal economy look like?
I mean, I think that small businesses are okay. But I do think command economies are, in retrospect, now starting to look more appealing. Especially now, we see how China was able to weather the 2008 recession compared to America, which struggled to get out of it. And even now with the coronavirus, you see how decisive and the central banks in China are, which are run by the government, in having banks loan at zero interest to small businesses, prioritizing struggling families, and so on. Then we look at what's happening in America. You get $1.5 trillion zero interest loan to Goldman Sachs and other banks, private banks like that, who actually it's no strings attached. They get this funny money, and they can loan that money at whatever price they want. If it's a bear market, they can retrench on credit like they did in 2008, which is why the recession lasted so long. Basically, you didn't see any. Basically, what I'm saying is that in the private banking system is the U.S. Federal Reserve, which is privately owned, also giving zero interest money to these banks and hoping a couple dollars trickle down to the rest of us. And I don't think that's a fair system or a functional system. And we see now with the problems with the supply chain and things like the businessmen who are very unpatriotic in this country. There's lots of problems with capitalism.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So in terms of command economies looking more appealing, I don't think any command economy played out very successfully in the history of the world that I'm aware of. I think there were a couple. There's I don't know if people bring up Catatonia or some shit that have lasted for a couple years. But China is definitely not a command economy. They have a mixed market that responds to private incentives. The government is the owner of a lot of these businesses, but it's still very much not a command economy. The government does not dictate which goods and services are produced. They respond to market incentives, which is a capitalist idea. So China would never be.
If the Chinese government, if these companies.
Well, actually, wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. You said 7 things. I got to respond to them instead of letting you get away with every ridiculous thing you said. The idea that central banks in China are ran by the government, so they make loans at 0% interest. I mean, the U.S. Federal Reserve has kept interest at historically low rates for the past decade.
I didn't say that. The Chinese bank, the People's Bank, isn't loaning at 0% interest.
Okay, so
yeah,
what is the point of bringing that up?
The point of bringing that up is that the money they give out to underlings, it has strings attached, that they have to use it to help people, rather than use it for whatever they want.
Oh, sure, we do that in the United States. That's what our government budget goes towards. We don't dictate, obviously, what private companies do with their money, but that's because we run a capitalist economy, I guess. But I mean, we have Congress to dictate spending from the federal government. You're talking about a $1.5 trillion no interest. Are you talking about the recent repo market thing in the United States?
What I'm talking about is partially that, but what I'm talking about
so real
in general.
Quick, I'm sorry, I can't let you go because you said 7 things, and if I let you go off, then I've got 20 more things to respond to. Right. So the recent $1.5 trillion thing, that wasn't funny money or random whatever loan. That was the Treasury providing liquid cash to financial institutions in exchange for Treasury notes. They're not just giving them money; they're exchanging
keeping
cash.
them stock with money.
Yeah, but they're trading it. It's it's collateralized debt. It's a secured debt. That's not just nothing, right? So that would be like the federal government giving me $100 and then me giving them back a Treasury note for $100, and then
it's at 0% interest.
It's a secured debt. Every debt, even consumer debt, is very, very low interest if it's secured. That's why our car loans.
But it's higher than 0%.
It can be, sure. I mean, you can get
it is.
Well, you can get a 0% interest car loan. Everybody in the audience knows that those exist. You can get 0%.
They exist, but they're not. You know what's funny? If I was Goldman Sachs, if I behaved financially like Goldman Sachs does, I would not get a 0% loan from anyone in my personal life if I use money like they do.
That's because you're an individual. You're not a company. You have a fundamentally different operation.
Bank run by Jews.
It has nothing to do with Jews and everything to do with your total lack of understanding of financial markets. It doesn't matter who runs Goldman Sachs. We're not talking about the owner. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're pivoting so hard. You're about to tear your ACL. Okay, calm down. All right. It has nothing to do with who's running the banks. We haven't even gotten to the Jews yet. Don't worry. I'm sure we'll get there. Okay. The idea of providing liquidity to banks, okay, by exchanging their treasury notes with actual cash so that they can continue
I'm not disputing this. I'm not disputing this.
But you said no. You said 1.5 trillion in funny money. It's not funny money. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of this economic transaction.
What I'm disputing, what the problem I have with the current system is that the Federal Reserve gives 0% interest cash to Goldman Sachs, but does not do it to average families. That's my problem. Okay, why do we have to have Goldman Sachs as a middleman to loan to small businesses and to working families when we can just open up Federal Reserve banks and loan it to people directly. Why don't we just do that?
Because our current understanding of the economy is that you can't just print and lend infinite money at 0% interest rate. Now, obviously, our economic...
But you can to the Goldman Sachs.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. You
First of all,
can do it.
I don't even think because these people have different jobs in the market. It's not like Goldman Sachs is going out and buying and running car companies and paying.
What? I don't have an argument.
Wait, hold on. You just said like 35. You just said like 35 wrong things in a row. Wait. Come on, dude.
You can't give out.
Dude, this is not a good faith argument.
You're saying you can't give 0% loan cash to ordinary people, but you can give it to investment banks to loan to ordinary people with usury. Why? Why is that?
If you want, we can spend like. If you want, we can.
For that, other than corruption.
Have you? Well, I don't know. You run a blog on this. Have you ever talked to an actual economist that studies finance that can give you a reason on why these loans are? Do you think it's just some giant conspiracy and that normally the
yes, I do.
Who cares? I think you should care if you're going to sit here ranting about it.
Who cares what these phony baloney economists, often in the pay, they work for foundations that take donations from Goldman Sachs, say to rationalize a fucking intuitively bullshit system.
So hold on, just so I can understand. So all the educated people around the world, anybody that studies central bank finance, all of these people are on the payrolls of the mysterious Jews. All the people that study economics.
Because there are many educated people that criticize this in the exact same way I do. There's a lot of different opinions when it comes to this practice. There are some people that get lost in the web of semantics and oftentimes bullshit.
No. It's not just semantics. No. It's not just. You can't just hand wave every explanation as semantics because it doesn't fit your weird conspiracy that Jews are running the fucking world.
I didn't say that alone.
You said literally, and in a conversation about finance, you decided to bring up who owns Goldman Sachs when it's not relevant to the operation of the financial system. You're trying to pivot so hard because you want to talk about Jews that you won't even sit here and think for 2 seconds of your understanding of the financial system works the way that it works.
You're attacking me.
I'm not attacking you.
And you're not actually addressing. You're not. Let me ask you a very simple.
I'm literally bringing up what you just said.
Hold on. Let me ask you. Let me repeat my question. Let me repeat my question very slowly.
Okay, repeat your question.
Very slowly. Grab your stress ball. Here. Why is it? Again, give me an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that the Federal Reserve can provide cash liquidity at 0% interest to Goldman Sachs, but can't provide it to ordinary people?
Because ordinary people do not have the collateral to back up that debt and cannot pay back those massive sums of money in as short a time period as massive financial institutions like Goldman Sachs can. A person can't hand over their car, get a car and then pay back that loan in 3 months. If you look at this $1.5 trillion repo thing that you just recently brought up, the timelines on these loans are incredibly fucking short. It's done for liquidity, not so that they can just take it and invest in banks. They have to pay these back, these massive $1 trillion or more for individual institutions, hundreds of billions or tens of billions. They have to pay back these loans in a matter of months. An average person, you could probably, I guess if you wanted to get a loan like that, you could, but you would default on it every time. An average person can't take a loan out for $250,000 and pay it back in 3 months like Goldman Sachs can. Collateral.
Well, then why, if Goldman Sachs is so great with their money and so responsible, why do they need a $1.5 trillion cash injection from the government?
Because
why?
Because if we can have a government that helps us weather great financial difficulties. Why?
You're not answering the question.
I am answering the question. It's not complicated because we wouldn't expect every single business to
why
give
don't
itself.
They have cash?
Because holding cash reserves is a detriment to the economy. Nobody wants to just hold on to cash. We want that money to be lent. The whole reason why the Fed is injecting liquidity into these institutions is because we don't want them to hold on to cash. We want that money to be. It's called the velocity of money, right? We want it to be circulating in the economy. I don't want Goldman Sachs to have $10 trillion fucking in its reserves. I want that lent out to American businesses and to American people to buy shit.
If you want money circulating in the economy, because the point I'm making, you're saying that people don't have collateral, they're not going to pay it back. What I'm saying is, instead of using Goldman Sachs as a middleman that charges interest, they charge interest on their loans. If you look at credit card interest, it could range wildly depending on your credit history. They charge interest on their loans, right? So what I'm saying is, why doesn't the Federal Reserve, for people that want to that can take that money and people that need it, especially to get back on their feet, why doesn't the Federal Reserve give it to people directly at 0% interest. You know, a lot of people that
that
are in consumer debt
Mhm.
are actually fighting every month just to pay the interest.
Yeah.
Okay.
The fact that
So
you would
let's
compare
take the interest out of the equation, and let's actually have a credit system that is fair. Because it's not fair that Goldman Sachs, if your point is that we need money circulating in the system, what better way to do it than to loan it to small businesses, than to loan it to people directly at 0% interest? What better way than to do that?
I've already answered this question. If you don't understand the difference between trading liquid cash for a treasury note versus credit card interest that is totally unsecure, if you don't understand, maybe for people in the audience that are wondering, why is my credit card interest rate 24%, but my car note is 6% or 5%? Why is my home mortgage 3.5%? The reason is because those debts are secured by underlying assets. When Goldman Sachs is trading money, the Federal Reserve, all of that debt is collateralized and it's backed up by underlying assets. They pay this debt back sometimes in a matter of days, sometimes in 12 hours. A human that buys something, a normal consumer that buys something on a credit card at 24% interest is doing so because if they default on that debt, then you're shit out of luck. I can't go to a person that owes me $10,000 in credit card debt and go into their house and steal their My Little Pony collection or like a computer desk or a monitor they bought. Like, no, that debt is unsecure. The types of loaning that are done to financial institutions is fundamentally different than the types of loans that are done to individuals. This is basic finance. This is not worth talking about. We should move on to the next topic. Like, if you don't understand the difference between a credit card loan and a repo market, these are fundamentally different things.
Why did Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, because the kind of red herring you're using is
it's not a red herring. It's finance 101. But go ahead. Sorry.
The kind of logic you're using is that yes, people, you might not get paid back, so on. Problem is, why did Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs in the 2008 crisis, especially, why did they need the government to stabilize them? Clearly, they're not so stable in terms of their obligations either. So why is it that they can do, Goldman Sachs is notorious around the world for its, quote, exotic financial instruments. It's basically a bunch of fucking really dirty scheming stuff going on, and that's not just my opinion. This is something shared by
welcome to
many
derivative
people.
Markets, of course, sure.
Yeah. So why is it that, knowing all of this, the government again gives them liquidity at 0% interest, knowing how irresponsible they are with this money, and not ordinary people who may be, in some cases, just as irresponsible, but in other cases will actually pay their stuff back. There are studies on, for example, microfinance loans, which I find repulsive on an ethical level, but there's studies that poor people in working class people tend to be better at paying these small loans off than Goldman Sachs is with its obligations.
This is a
Not just
horrible
Goldman
example,
Sachs.
given that you brought up the 2008 bailouts. Those were paid back to the federal government with interest. So you're just wrong on that. First,
that's
no.
But why did they get bailed out?
So,
and a person behind on their mortgages who's unemployed get a special loan at 0% interest to pay their mortgage until they get back on their feet.
Sure.
And
so
are able
people,
to pay back the zero interest
yes.
back.
So that happened. Yes. That was called the Home Affordable Refinance Program, HARP. It was done under Obama. Sure. I think it ended a few years ago. But
many
people could
still
qualify.
Were foreclosed.
Sure. Many people were because there was a huge housing bubble. Of course, sure. Oh my God. It's like,
okay.
no. You can't say, when you're just like, you happened to stumble into a point that was marginally correct after fucking drunkenly hammering at like every incorrect point you could in the store on your way to the bathroom. Okay. So hold on. Wait. Chill. So there's two things going on here. Okay. You've got two separate questions that you're confusing with the other. So one is, should massive financial institutions that are the backbone of our economy be allowed to partake in speculative markets that might be damaging to the overall economy? This is an amazing question, and in my opinion, the answer is probably not. It seems really fucking unhealthy. Then the second question you're asking is why do large businesses need a cash injection from the government to ensure liquidity in times of crisis? Well, this is actually...
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying why not large businesses, okay? Because Goldman Sachs actually is, even with the... Listen, I'm no fan of corporations, but the corporations got to go through Goldman Sachs to get the cash at interest. And if you know anything about how these heavily indebted corporations operate, they are usually just paying off the interest every month. So this is a
What do you mean by
toxic
just paying? No. What are you talking about? This is not how the world of corporate loans works.
The burden of the interests on their debt is what a lot of it causes more problems. It just gets them deeper
I'm
in
sorry.
the hole.
No, we would have to we would have to I don't want to put you on the spot, but corporate debt, it feels like you're doing this really common thing that I see a lot of lefties do. You're conflating corporate debt with personal debt. Corporations use debt and leverage debt to become. You absolutely are. Corporations can hold debt on their books. Sometimes corporations even take on debt to do like stock buybacks or something. Like a corporation can leverage debt to make money in far different ways than an individual can. If an individual tells you I've got $20,000 in debt and my annual income is $60,000 a year or whatever, that's really fucking bad. Sometimes corporations that have taken on a lot of debt are actually seen as more favorable because they're using that debt to finance larger capital expansion. This comparison of
that's actually not true.
That absolutely is true.
Most corporations are actually using their debt to, like you said, stock buybacks. That's the big one in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's great. Look at the stock market and look at Boeing shaking their coffee cup outside the government.
What does the current pandemic have to do with? Wait. What does the current pandemic have to do with stock buybacks?
How about the diving stock market?
So that was because of stock buyback? I thought that stock buybacks were supposed to artificially inflate stock value. Why are they going down?
Dude, why are you being facetious?
I'm not being facetious. You just have no idea how finance works. And you thought you could have this conversation. It's hilarious.
I'm telling you. What I'm telling you. Is
are we going to talk about the oil crisis?
These corporations have, like Boeing, have been using their debt powered machinery, their debt powered finances, unbalanced books, to buy their own stock so that it's more. It's of higher value on the stock market. Artificially, it bubbles up.
How is that artificial?
Because if you're buying your own stock and you're engaging in that kind of speculative activity, you're not doing anything productive.
How is that's literally
you're
the
not
opposite of
building
speculative.
anything.
Wait. That's because there are no good investments to make. That's pretty common of large companies. Sometimes
if there's no good if there's no good investments to make, why are they getting in debt?
For a variety of reasons. Well, right now it's because airline travel has been slashed by fucking 80%. Do you think there's any other industry that could survive that?
But they were doing this. Listen.
Yeah.
They were making record profits. They were getting
more
debt.
No. This is
the
not
airline
true.
Industry.
It's not true.
Various industries got the Trump tax cut. They got more money than before. They had more money than before, and they still were getting into massive debt. You see this also with the oil shale and all that, getting into massive debt and doing what with the debt? Mergers, buybacks. It's parasitical activity that benefits the shareholders but doesn't produce anything for our country.
By definition, what you just said doesn't make sense.
The second there's a little bump in the financial markets like we're having now, there's a huge, there's trillions of dollars being wiped out.
You think this is a little bump in the market right now?
Well,
you think this pandemic? No, hold on. I just want to hear you say that again. You think this is a little bump in the market when entire fucking states?
Why? You know exactly what I meant.
No, I know what you mean. No, I'm not being. Can you stop saying every time I call you out on some retarded shit you say that I'm being facetious?
You're very. You know what? You're fucking. If you want to fucking engage in name calling, like I said,
I didn't call you any names. I said you're saying really dumb shit.
Go have your cookie and your glass of milk and get your girlfriend to change a nappy, and we can have an adult conversation. I'm trying to talk to you like a civilized human being, and you're acting out. Why do you call everything? No, that's retarded. No, listen.
Well, because I'm asking you questions, and instead of just giving me simple answers, you have to go off into all these massive conspiracy theories.
Because it's not a massive conspiracy theory. What I meant, if you want me to be extra clear. An extra definitive.
I do. So can you tell me how a stock buyback is a bad thing? That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear.
When there's a problem in the stock market, all that debt you got into to buy your own stock so that you can give your shareholders and various finance capitalist speculators bigger profits without doing any work or taking any risks in the short term. When you do that, when there's a problem with the stock market, these companies like Boeing is doing now, they go to the taxpayer to bail them out.
So firstly,
okay.
Sure. Okay, so let me go all the way back because holy shit, there was so much said here that was just so fucking wrong.
Just give me one. I'm sorry, just 1 second. Just 1 second. Hold on.
Okay.
How you doing, Ralph? I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
fucking kill myself. Holy shit. This is like
Well,
every economically uninformed socialist I've ever talked to. It makes me want to fucking jump off a cliff. Oh my god.
I'm just the friendly host. I don't know. We'll see.
I know.
think
Speaking
we
of
have-
economics, I think it's time to read the super chat.
Yes, agreed. Okay.
All right, okay.
So, okay, well, let me read these, and you guys can have a final word on each side there, and then.
Wait,
I'll
wait,
let
hold on.
Stryker-
Before we do this, because there's so much.
Okay,
that was
go
said.
ahead. Go ahead. Go. You know what?
Okay,
Go ahead. Yeah. Go
okay.
ahead. Fine,
So
that's
let
fine.
me back all the way up. So when you say, why do major institutions need financial injections or cash injections or liquidity injections from the Fed or whatever in order to stay afloat? The reason is because we want to keep our economy moving. We don't want every single business hoarding money or not loaning money or sitting on piles of money in anticipation of a massive worldwide pandemic. That would be catastrophic to the entire economy. We want to keep the economy moving. We want to keep workers employed. We want to keep, hopefully, wages going up, hopefully cost of goods down. This is why we want companies to generally operate on an understandable margin, which doesn't mean preparing for a worldwide pandemic constantly. That's why, if a worldwide pandemic does happen, we look to the federal government to say, hey, can you give our businesses a little bit of a hand to keep them afloat? This is like one of the most no-brainer policy decisions in the world. This is literally a win-win-win-win policy decision. If the government gives a cash injection to these companies, it helps the companies not go underwater. It helps the workers not get fired or laid off. It helps the federal government or the taxpayer because those loans are often paid back with interest. And it helps consumers that can continue to buy products for cheaper costs than they would if all of these companies were to go under and the cost of goods either increases or these goods disappear completely. So the idea that the... Whoa, hold on. You said so much wrong stuff. Okay, so the idea that it's bad for the government to ensure liquidity, like, what are you going to argue against, like, FDIC insurance next or whatever? Like, the idea that it's bad that the government is going to provide liquidity in times of crises for businesses and that businesses should somehow just be ready to take a 50% cut in business on a whim would be so catastrophically destructive to our finance markets and our entire economy that it's laughable to even suggest that. Firstly, secondly,
you're doing a great job.
No,
But
stop! I can't even finish. I haven't even
All right.
finished getting through all the wrong shit you said. So stock buybacks are Okay. Oh, Jesus. Hold on. Firstly, airlines are not these massively profitable industries. I went ahead and I shot the last like couple decades of profits or whatever, or the last 15 years of American Airlines. They were literally just profitable. I think like 5 or 6 years ago. And yeah, they were posting decent profits, but the profit of like $7 billion when your revenues are 40 plus billion. Those margins are generally pretty thin. The margins for airlines are very thin in the United States, and they always have been. The quickest way to become a millionaire in the United States is to have $1 billion and buy an airline. There's a reason why these things go out of business all the time, and the idea that there's some massively profitable company is just not true. It's not supported by any data whatsoever. Nobody ever seriously makes this argument ever. For a second, okay, hold on. That's great. You can go back. You can go back.
Big tax cuts, but go ahead.
You can go back and do all of this when I'm done this. Jesus Christ. Okay, also, this idea that stock buybacks are some parasitic activity, when by definition, a stock buyback is returning money to the shareholders that invested in your company, is literally the exact opposite of a parasitic activity. A parasitic activity would be a company making a lot of money and sitting on that money, and it can't do anything else with it in the economy, being a parasite with that money that's just sitting there. A better idea would probably be to buy back stocks, return money to shareholders, and let those shareholders take those dollars and invest them in other companies that can invest those in profitable projects. Now, if you want to talk about something like, well, when Trump gave those big tax cuts, the only thing companies did with it was do buybacks instead of investing in their companies, I agree. Those tax cuts were fucking stupid. But that's a criticism of the tax cuts themselves, not stock buybacks in general. Any company that reaches a sufficient size or economy of scale is either going to be paying back a lot of its profits in stock buybacks, or if we make those illegal, in the form of dividends to their shareholders. If you invest in a company, you want to make money on it, obviously. This is true of every single investment you could ever possibly make.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me just say a quick thing, Ralph, and then
That's
we can
fine.
move on.
Yeah. That's fine.
Here's my response. So this is a fundamental difference in our values, Destiny. You believe the shareholders, as long as they're getting dividends, then that's functional. That's fine. I don't believe that. I think
Never
our
said
country. You said, hey, they're doing what they have to do to deliver
I'm
profits.
just explaining
to shareholders.
basic finance to you right now.
All right,
I never
let
said
him
that.
finish.
Sure,
But hold on, let me just say one
Let
last
him get
thing.
in.
Let me
Yeah,
just
go
say one
ahead.
last
Go
thing.
ahead.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, let him get in. Yeah,
Destiny admitted before that there's nothing. He said it. His words. These companies have nothing to invest in. Your words. So if they have nothing to invest in, how does giving them more money raise wages or improve the more people with jobs or create a better economy for everyone? It doesn't. That is the fundamental difference in what you and I think. Sure, it does help the shareholders. It does help the Boeing CEO whose planes are literally fucking dropping from the sky get a massive bonus in a year where he's retired from the position. So the point I'm making is that I don't agree with this system, and I think it should be changed. That's the fundamental disagreement. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so
All right, now let me read
oh shit! Wait, just one quick thing. I'm so sorry,
No.
Ralph. I love you. You're gonna have so many
Then I'm
super
gonna
chats. You're gonna have so many super chats.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so just real quick, when you said
Go
this is
ahead.
where you fundamentally disagree, I literally agreed with you. I don't know if you didn't hear me or you didn't understand that, but I literally said if companies have nothing to invest in, giving them massive tax cuts is a really dumb idea. Very critical of Trump for doing that. If you're giving tax cuts to these companies and all they're doing is returning value to shareholders, of course you wouldn't expect a tax cut to raise wages. Wages, like labor, that's a cost of doing business. Giving more money to a company to raise wages makes absolutely no fucking sense whatsoever. That's trickle-down economics. The Republicans push it as some weird supply side meme. It's dumb as fuck. If you want to raise wages,
agree.
yeah, sure. But I never disagreed on that. But there's a big difference between needing to provide liquidity to companies in times of crisis versus giving them tax cuts in order for them to just like send the money back to shareholders,
Sure.
which makes no sense.
My solution to that would be to nationalize Boeing. If the government is willing to, if this company continues repeatedly to be begging for bailouts for liquidity, then perhaps it shouldn't be owned by people that give themselves massive bonuses when their planes are dropping down from the
That's
sky.
awesome. So why don't we just have that conversation about nationalizing companies rather than making all these weird, horrible finance arguments that make no sense?
I was critiquing capitalism.
You're not
but
critiquing it. You're just making a bunch of wrong statements. That's like being critical of human biology because we have 17 fingers. It doesn't make
Okay,
sense
all
if your
right,
critiques
let's
are
move
wrong.
Come on.
Now we're an hour in, so let me read these and then I'll let Stryker bring up his topic here. Now, there's several topics. I don't know. We'll see what comes next. It'll be up to you, Stryker. Let me read these though. It has been a fiery conversation so far. I think that's an understatement. Terry J mentioned for me to ask the question. Y'all ask that question later. Sans Wine, subscribe monthly. Thank you, sir. Paramedic says Parabellum. Let's see. Unruh with the diamond didn't say anything. Quambomb87 says, I'm going to watch a Dame replay. All right, enjoy that. Base Anglo says, is Destiny willing to debate Patrick Casey? I would say yes, because we were trying to set that up at one point. Maybe we'll try to set it up again. I don't know. Pinky Culture says some kind of money from the Middle East. Money printer goes brr. Save Western Civilization says round 1 was Destiny. Round 2 clearly going to Stryker. Digital Pimp says fuck Stryker for making me agree with Destiny. King Porgy says round 1 Destiny. Round 2 Stryker with Destiny. Spurging win. Robert 32 says Kelly Miller is trash. Bruni Strongbear says why would a personal loan from the federal government have to be the same amount as to Goldman Sachs? Porsche person, since Destiny's on Twitch, I'll be careful there. Destiny is a big meanie. Quote Eric Stryker. The Real Tinchy says Adderall invented by Germans. Super pill. Wignat's mad. That made me laugh. Robert 32 says Destiny send a ninja to Ralpho. Bet you won't. No, I bet he won't either. King 4G says how to logic with Destiny, Red Bull, and Adderall. Robert 32 says olive oil economy is through the roof. Arcade Outpost says that those people in the Middle East power being taboo is testament to it. I'm sure we'll get to those people in the Middle East here in a moment. Now let me refresh these because there are some on stream elements talking about peaceful sunsets. I won't read that one. Eric DeMamp says, why does Eric Stryker still refer to himself as Eric Stryker? Obviously, I'm not going to read the name that you're putting out there. And then I'll leave that there. But thank you for the contribution. Sancho 13 says, Destiny argues in bad faith, is a proponent of incest and twincest, argues on the side of eating shit and drinking piss, doesn't bathe with his greasy hair and love of dirty tricks. Why give him attention? Well, I mean, I like him as a guest.
What is the difference between incest and twincest? Wouldn't one be a subset of the other? Like if somebody that supports incest probably supports twincest by default. But okay, really.
Plus, we've had this conversation.
Yeah, bang for your buck there on that dono. Okay.
Blue Division says so. Vaush was scared to debate a real socialist, so he sent someone else and said, "Look, let's not bring Vaush into this. We have a whole subset of Vaush. I'm sure everybody knows what happened last weekend. So we'll leave that there. But thank you." Let's see. This one says, can we please pass to the phase when the Muslim wignats on wheelchairs get to occupy Wall Street? Also, I found a Brazilian nationalist who's willing to come over to talk about the situation down there. Yeah, email me. I'll talk to a Brazilian nationalist. Let's see. All you guys should take a modern arts course. You'll learn about why and how some arts and media like music has changed. You would understand why certain things are considered high art. Why we don't go out in waves to listen to 1600s folk music. Actually, I didn't know that your major was music, Destiny. That was knowledge to me. I do now, though. Kegs for Kavanaugh says, can't force a man who can't tell the difference between God, why do they? Black.com and Wagner to appreciate art. Strike hitting his stride, forcing Destiny to shill for bankers. Most Americans want to, I won't read that, but don't like. What's more productive, loaning to new families or Goldman speculation? Blue Division says, Striker, stop being civil with this person. Destiny keeps cutting you off. It's obnoxious. Now, Striker, it's your time, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. So let's talk about I know Destiny has been reading a lot of historical stuff. We'll get to that later, but let's talk about nuts and bolts here. So what, I'm a proponent of total immigration restriction to all Western countries. I'm guessing from the series of opinions you have that you're for mass immigration. Am I right about that, Mr. Destiny?
Not generally. I'm for immigration as long as it makes economic sense, I guess. As long as within reasonable restrictions. I'm not gonna have any race quotas or whatever. If I don't know where you're going with it, but
well, there is no economic sense to immigration. There's no need for immigration in the United States right now.
That's our unemployment is literally at 3 point. Our unemployment is literally the lowest it's ever been in the history of the United States. It's at 3.5%. Like businesses are hiring at like.
Believe that number? You believe that number? You think only 3% of people in this country are out of work? You really think that?
That's not what the U3 unemployment stands for. I'm sorry. You're going to cite the U6 like I've never heard of it before? We can pretend that like there's a meaningful...
Why do you use that? Why do you use the fake statistic rather than the real?
Well, because that's a really good question, Yeah. And if we were to wander in... Well, exactly. That's a really great question. No, I'm not being disingenuous. It's a very difficult question for economists to ask. There's a lot of different ways to keep track of unemployment. For instance, do we count young people that are under the age of 18 but could still technically work but would have to do it at restricted hours? Do we count older people that have willingly left the workforce? Do we count people that are collecting Social Security but are still working? It's a really hard... Do we count people that are not really looking for work? Do we count people that are discouraged from looking for work? That's a really complicated question. It's funny that you're going to sit here and pretend like it's got such an obvious answer when it's one of the most hotly debated things in economics, and it's one of the reasons why the federal government keeps 7 different numbers on unemployment.
My point is that
your point was incorrect. It's not simple.
The answer isn't immigration. That's my point.
Okay, that's fine, but the U3 unemployment, which is widely regarded as one of the better metrics for how we should figure unemployment, is 3.5%. It's lower than it ever has been in the history of all of unemployment. And the U6 unemployment, which is maybe another one that you want to use, which includes discouraged workers, is 7%, which is also lower than what we would consider most frictional unemployment.
There's also an undercount. Because it's not counting people that are going on disability, people
it does. That's literally why these other forms of unemployment tracking exist. You can look at labor force participation rate. You can look at the U3, U4, U5, or U6. You can look at any measure you want, Stryker, and it's all going to tell you the same thing.
Furthermore, why isn't the unemployment rate zero? And if the unemployment rate's not zero, why do we need more immigration?
So the unemployment rate isn't zero because some level of frictional unemployment is considered necessary for an economy to function. You want businesses to be able to hire people, and you want people to be able to apply to businesses for jobs. Economists consider ideal unemployment to be about 5.5%, anywhere from 5 to 6%, depending on which.
Is that ideal for the people out of work?
That's ideal for the people and the businesses. Yeah, the people and businesses.
Yeah, and that's not who we should be prioritizing. We should be prioritizing the average people in this country.
Yeah, prioritizing the average people in the country doesn't mean 0% unemployment.
I don't care if a business needs 100 million Mexicans to fucking work for cheap. I don't care about that.
Well, but you do care if poor people can't afford to buy all their food from Trader Joe's or from some $17 for a gallon of milk store. Lower cost of goods is actually important to a lot of people that can't afford to buy, the most expensive shit they can in the United States. Not only are lower cost of goods important to people.
How come food is affordable in Japan where there's no immigration?
Japan has a totally different style of government and has a whole bunch of problems.
Not really. It's a liberal democracy with a capitalist economy. What are you talking about? It's the same economy. It's literally a country that was occupied and founded by the United States. So why is it
this is the weirdest non sequitur I've ever heard in my entire life? Japan literally has a one-party system and has some of the highest cost of living in the entire world. That's really what you think the United States of America should go to?
So do many cities in America that have the most immigrants. L.A., New York, these places have some of the highest cost of living in the world, and they're full of immigrants. So what are you talking about?
Why would I compare L.A. to Japan?
Because it has a high cost of living, and there's many millions of people living there.
I can move an hour out of LA, and I can move 1 hour out of LA and rent like a 4-bedroom house for $2,500 a month.
What does that have to do with what I'm saying?
Because I don't know why you're comparing the literal most expensive places to live in the United States to the totality of other countries. It's mind-numbingly fucking stupid.
the state of California, the cities in the state of California, are some of the most expensive on the planet.
And some of the cheap, there are very cheap cities to live in California as well. Have you ever been to Central California or Northern California? Like,
oh yeah, those are lovely places. What I'm saying
so you're saying
is,
the only you're saying the most lovely places are the ones with all the immigration? I don't know if that's the road you want to go down there, dude.
What part of Central California are you talking about? What place in particular?
There are places in Central California. I don't know. Nobody knows them because nobody wants to go there because people want to be in LA where all the immigrants are, surprisingly enough, or San Diego, or up north in San Francisco, or San Jose. Like,
the point I'm making here is that a lot of those the very, very cheap places are full of like basically illegal Mexicans in parts of Central California. I thought you said the most expensive places were the ones that had high immigration. Now you're saying the cheap places are the ones with high immigration? What about Texas and Arizona where the cost of living is cheaper? There's tons of immigrants. Let me explain this very slowly so you can't.
Please, because almost everything you said contradicts itself.
Okay.
Go for it.
So, no. Okay.
It's a lot easier in a blog post, I'm sure.
Let me explain it slowly.
Okay, go for it. I'm ready.
So countries that have very low rates of immigration have affordable food. Poland, Japan, Hungary. People there don't starve. People there can afford food. They have no immigrants. Okay. In America, the places with some of the most dense concentration of immigration have the highest rates of poverty, and yet also the most high prices of virtually everything. Everything is more expensive in LA. Everything is more expensive in New York City. If you move out to, I don't know, Pennsylvania, where there are very few immigrants, everything is half the price. So why is that if what you're saying is true?
So America has affordable food. I don't know if you know that or if you think that all food in America is unaffordable. I don't know what comparing the affordability of food is in other countries is relevant to the affordability of food in America. And also,
very relevant because if you're saying immigration means cheap food, and I show you a country that has no immigration and also has cheap food, then
Japan is not an example of that, though. When you used as an example, Japan is Japan's cost of living and economy are in so much trouble. They're actually begging for immigrants now. Japan has opened itself up to immigration more than ever.
In Japan, it's cheaper than Tokyo. You're talking about the big cities there.
I can go to big cities in Texas. I can go to Austin. I can go to Dallas. These are places with a lot of immigrants that also have really low cost of living.
Austin is insanely expensive, and Dallas is getting up
compared to a place like LA. Absolutely not.
Well, not compared to LA, but it's definitely Austin is amongst the most expensive parts to live in Texas. It's because of many reasons, not just immigration.
Maybe in Texas, but compared to the rest of the U.S., Austin is fairly cheap.
Okay. Well, you made a point. You said that having an entire class of basically serfs, illegal immigrant serfs, working for wages below.
Can you stop saying illegal? I've never said illegal immigrants. We're talking about immigrants. If you're talking about illegal immigrants, you can have that conversation.
Oh, who do you think is picking your lettuce, bro? You think it's people with citizenship? Those are people.
We're pivoting.
That
we're
are
pivoting. This is a big pivot. If you want to talk about
country, but they're hideously exploited. Agricultural labor in this country is some of the most exploited of all the sectors, and it's because the people doing it are illegal immigrants from Mexico that don't have any rights, and also they work for very cheap. So
okay, I agree with you on that point. I'll concede we should have amnesty for all the illegals. Okay,
yeah, that's exactly what I said.
Gotcha. I agree with that. But also illegals and legal
immigrants
are two separate groups of people.
They can fight their banks in their country and have a better society.
So that's slave labor then should be white people in the U.S. or do we get the other?
No. How about this? One, you use machines. And two, you pay agricultural labor what it's actually worth. You know, it's so interesting. I saw an article about the Mississippi chicken plants they had, the meat packing and all that. Remember, there was an ICE raid there. And in the 1960s, people in those plants made more, like almost like when adjusted for inflation, significantly more money an hour. I can't think of the exact number at the moment. I can pull it up. Significantly more money an hour. In fact, the guy who wrote Fast Food Nation wrote about this. What's his name? Let me look this up. He's I mean, you can say wow, but
we're talking about chicken machines in Mississippi. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So this guy, he's a journalist who studies these things. Eric Schlosser. He wrote that
he's not Jewish, is he?
I don't know. I mean, is that relevant to you?
I don't know. I hope not. I'm not sure if he's trustworthy. But
Okay.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
So-
You brought it up earlier with
so-
Goldman Sachs. I'm just curious if he's Jewish now. I just want to make sure we're being consistent on when we care about Jewish people publishing stuff.
I'm not. I know you have like this caricature of me in your mind, but I'm not some like reflexive bigot. If some,
I mean,
Jew says
anybody
something
that
that's
like
true, I'll give it
anybody
to
that
him.
brings up Jews in an unprovoked manner,
You-
it sets
you
off a
know,
lot of
let
red
me-
flags for
let
me,
me-
dude.
Let me get
Sorry, go back to the
point.
chicken factories. Go ahead.
So Americans that work there made more money, significantly more money, were out for the very tough work
Mhm.
than illegal aliens that were raided by ICE were making last year.
Sure.
And so my point with that is that, maybe a pound of chicken is worth a little more.
What is something worth? How do you determine that? I'm super curious when you say what it's actually worth.
Is this like one of those open-ended? Are you like Mises guy or
No,
something?
so
Or you could do
I don't know if you realize. So
calculation
you've done it.
problems
You
and
did
shit?
it. So earlier, I didn't forget. You did this with high culture as well. You drop these really loaded terms where you're begging the question. I think your audience knows what you mean, but you don't
I mean,
actually have. Wait,
You don't know.
no,
You
no,
don't know the difference between a black man and a white man. How am I going to expect you to differentiate between Mozart and Kanye West?
Well, I can
can't do that.
differentiate it because I have the
And
educational
if-
background
if
to do
you
so.
have
Firstly,
no-
secondly,
if
I
you
can tell you the
have
difference between a
no
black man and a
starting
white man. They
point-
look different.
If you have no
thirdly,
starting point
pivot. We're
for
pivoting
reason, how
again.
can I talk to you
It's
in a manner
You-
that requires logic?
The
if
starting-
you
you can't-
temporarily suspend
so
logic
you
in
can't
order
use-
to
you
try
can't
and,
use-
and win a tie in an
Sure.
argument.
So you
I
can't
mean, how
can't
can I
use
do-
words like logic when you're literally begging the question at every point. You never define what high culture meant earlier. I let you get away with it because I don't care, right?
Well,
but now you're
okay.
telling me maybe you're giving me a prescription. You're telling me something that ought to be. You're telling me that maybe we should pay agricultural labor what it's actually worth, implying that right now we're paying it less
What
than
are-
what it's
what
worth.
are people-
so I'm curious,
what are
what is it
people-
worth to you?
What is it worth?
Why can't you? Yeah,
Well,
what is
how
it
do you
worth?
how do you decide? Okay,
Yeah.
let me give you some very Mr. Finance 101. Let me give you
Okay, go for it.
economy 101.
Okay.
The price of labor
Shut the
is
fuck
what
up, bro.
people what people will take to do a job. Okay. And because Americans have families here, illegal aliens usually, not always, and I'm just going to be very, very specific and clear here so you don't get a way out.
Thank you.
Illegal aliens, not always, but many times, are single men
Mhm.
who live, for example, in the agricultural industry. They live in these kind of barracks that these companies, agribusiness, puts up for them.
Okay.
They live together. They have a much lower standard of living because they're saving up dollars to send back to their country. Again, that's money that our economy loses, by the way. Many
We don't
billions.
lose that money. It comes back to the United States. This also has to do with like finance, but I can
How?
explain that later if you want. So when we buy products or when we ship USD to other countries, that USD has to make its way back to the United States in the forms of purchasing goods or services or in the forms of capital investment. So for instance, we talk about like the trade deficit with China, or we talk about it's not reparations, it's repartitions. There's a name for the repatriation. There's a name-
Repatriation.
Repatriation,
Yes,
yeah, the money
yes.
that you send overseas. When that USD exists in other countries, especially because it's like a federal or the global reserve currency, that USD generally makes its way back to the United States in the forms of purchasing goods and services. Any other economy that's holding a lot of USD because of the way that governments work can't pay taxes in that currency, so it has to bring that USD back to the US to invest or buy things. So for instance, our giant trade deficit with China, oftentimes when we buy things from China, that money makes its way back to the US in the form of investments or in the form of purchase of goods and services.
Who gets those profits though?
You're asking it. Well, hold on. So yeah. I understand. I understand that you just got an answer that you totally weren't ready for. Now we can run down to try to find where the Jews
No,
get
I'm
paid off the end of this.
talking about
However, I don't need.
remittances-
I don't. No.
remittances.
Listen.
I'm
Stop.
not talking about
Let's chill.
Gentlemen,
Wait, yeah. I don't need to answer. I don't need to answer your extended trying to figure out like how you could possibly be right here. I'm just telling you that when USD goes overseas or goes to other countries, that isn't lost. It doesn't hurt our economy. That's just not true. Now, if you want to talk about what's an appropriate way to distribute income in the United States to different classes of people, I'm all for that. I love redistribution.
Exactly what I'm talking.
Sure, then let's talk about tax policy, not this
You're-
weird
you're-
idea.
No. I don't want
that
to
you-
talk about tax policy. I want to stress the point about immigration. The point
Okay.
I'm making.
Well-
You can have all these. You got a lot of tricks in your bag. I'll give you that. You can
My
say,
tricks
"Oh,
are
remittances,
101
you get them
understandings
back
of
because
finance and
people
economics,
then
but okay.
spend dollars, and you don't take into consideration that when some Mexican spends $100,000 in Mexico
Mhm.
with Mexican labor to build a house in Mexico, that is all economic activity lost to the average workers in the United States.
Where does that USD
Okay.
go in Mexico? What do they do with it? Do they just bury it in a hole?
It gets translated into the national currency usually.
How do they translate it?
It goes into paying for goods. That's why countries see it almost as a subsidy from America to have illegal aliens sending remittances.
It's not a subsidy though. That's not how it works. It's just there's not like a magic there's not a magic money. There's not like a magic money photocopier where you take your USD into a Mexican bank and you just magically turn that into a peso. That USD has to make its way back to the US in the form of the purchasing of a good or service or in some form of capital investment. That's it. That's it has
a lot of the capital and investment. Okay, listen. Let's get back to the core question.
The core question. So you were telling me that illegal immigrants don't have to make a lot of money because they don't have families, but then you told me that they actually make money and then they send the money back to their families in Mexico.
And here's the thing.
Which one is it?
Here's the thing. Okay.
Yeah.
My point. See, you keep assuming that I'm going to care that I speak on behalf of the white working people of America. Okay?
You just said you wanted to automate their fucking agricultural jobs. How are you telling me that you want to speak on their behalf? You said you literally said, and I quote it because I wrote it down. You said
white people are actively discriminated from agricultural.
You literally said quote. You said quote.
Many immigrants are selected for.
You literally said quote use machines for agricultural labor. Like you literally said that. Do you remember saying that or?
Let me rewind the tape for you. Okay. What I said.
Mm-hmm.
I said that immigration is a problem in many ways.
Okay.
You said, but we need mass immigration. We need these people.
I never said we needed mass immigration, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. We need immigration to do agricultural work so that food is affordable. I
never said that. This was your claim, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, people can rewind the video later and see.
Sure, they can. Find where I said we need immigration.
You made the claim that it's necessary to keep food cheap. I, on the other hand, showed you many industrialized countries with the exact same system America has, where they do not have any immigration and they have affordable food as well. So the point I'm getting at here is that is not an argument for immigration, the fact that it keeps food cheap. Let's stick to the fucking core.
Sure, stick to the core
argument.
So you're going to compare the U.S., to places like Japan that have an insanely high cost of living for food or higher cost of food than the U.S.
The U.S. has food prices have been going up in America too. So, I mean, what is your point?
Yeah, they've been going up too, but not as much as they have been in Japan.
The higher cost of food in Japan is compensated by higher wages. That's just how it works, okay? And the reason they have higher wages is there's less competition for jobs from immigrants. I mean, it's market 101, buddy. This is something that people have always taken into account, always acknowledged, until very recently were like both the communists and the capitalists like yourself, the neoliberals like yourself, you guys agree with Cato Institute bullshit, but that doesn't make it true. Okay, the reason why...
Wait, so is Economics 101 all bullshit, or are you citing it? Because I don't know.
Economics 101 says that if there's more people competing for a job, wages are going to be lower. That's not controversial.
But it is because it's more complicated than that, right? Higher availability...
You saying that? You said Economics 101. I'm telling you what Economics 101 says.
Sure,
if there's
I can
more
tell
people competing for a job, you're going to get paid a lot less.
Yeah, but you're assuming that putting more people in a certain market competing for a job will only have the impact of those people competing for a certain job. You're not taking into account the other types of economic activity that can bolster native wages as well. For instance, more labor being available in a given area might allow you to open up other businesses. In those businesses that open up, complementary positions for like management or supervisors will open that generally natives are more qualified for than immigrants. This is why when people have studied massive immigrations to different areas and they've tried to find all these horrible impacts on native wages, it's generally not found. There is a certain subclass of people, generally people without a high school education, that'll take like a 2 to 4% loss in income over like a long term.
Let me refer you to the number one guy who studied the economic impact of immigration on wages. This guy is George Borjas.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with Borjas' research and his responses to David Card on his big Muriel Boatlift study. And Borjas himself will tell you that it's about 2 to 4% earnings in just high school graduates with no college education.
His 1995 study found that $500 billion have been redistributed away from natives into profits for capitalists. That is the actual sum that he came up with. $500 billion taken from American workers.
It's It's really interesting.
And
You bring-
turn
no,
into
wait, real quick. Wait, no, hold on, just so I can respond to
capital
that.
for
Because I
big
know,
business.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So that 500 billion, what he said is there's probably been a negative fiscal impact of immigrants by about $500 billion, but there's probably been a positive economic impact of about $500 billion. He said that at the end of the day, what we need is a better tax policy that can allocate money away from the winners of that immigration policy back towards natives. That's his contention. He's not saying that we need no immigration. He's just saying that a form of wealth transfer.
I'm
can
not
occur
saying what
if
his
you-
opinions. I'm talking about this one study, this one statistic. So you
I'm
say
very
that
familiar with it. I've literally read the article. We can link it in chat.
Hold on.
No.
Let me
Because you're misquoting him.
Hey.
You're making it sound like he's anti-immigration.
No,
He's
you're
not.
the one that's misquoting. I say $500 billion in profits for capitalists, which is what he says. Big business. It's concentrated in the hands of a few.
Yeah.
Okay. And that money is taken. That's $500 billion taken from the many. Okay. That's the point I'm making. That American workers lost $500 billion, and lo and behold, it's in the pocket of the big capitalists in this country. And guess what? These people use it they don't use it in productive ways. That's the first thing. You can say progressive tax policy. I say let's end immigration and put that money back in the pockets of the people in this country.
And the way you do that is with tax policy.
No, you don't. You do it by ending immigration, deporting all illegals. That's how you fucking do it.
Sure. So
And you
I'm
know
going to
what? If
literally
the
let me.
capitalists don't
So
like
sure.
it, throw
Okay.
them up against the wall.
Sure. So let me wait, real quick, because I'm just gonna read the article because I'm very familiar with this Borjas article where he talks about this 500 billion figure. So I'm literally quoting Borjas himself, which is the guy that you decided to cite, by the way. But we're worrying about the wrong things, with policy fights focused on how many and which immigrants to accept, and not enough on how to mitigate the harm that they create along the way. To use a label recently coined by Larry Summers, a quote-unquote responsible nationalist, policy cannot ignore the reality that immigration has made some natives poorer. A policy that keeps them in mind might tax the agricultural and service companies that benefit so much from low-skilled immigrants and use the money to compensate low-skilled Americans for their losses and to help them transition to new jobs and occupations. Similarly, Bill Gates claims that Microsoft creates 4 new jobs for every H-1B visa granted. If true, firms like Microsoft should be willing to pay many thousands of dollars for each of these coveted visas. Those funds could be used to compensate and retrain the affected natives in the high-tech industry. If you're going to cite somebody like Borjas, know that Borjas' prescription for these problems is with tax policy. It's not just closing the border. Whoa. It's not just closing the borders.
What his prescriptions
well,
are.
I'm just going to say that
I'm concerned because I have different. Listen. There's a difference between diagnosis and the solution, right? So he's diagnosing the problem. He has a different solution than me. I agree with you. Okay.
Why would
I'm
you
not
say?
saying
Why would you give a diagnosis?
I'm not a George
Sure.
Borjaist who is going to follow every single thing he believes on everything.
Why would you
okay?
take the diagnosis of somebody that has so much more training and background in this and then give your own prescription? That's like saying I went to the doctor and they diagnosed me with cancer, but I ignored his chemo suggestions. I'm going to go do homeopathy or some shit.
Because if you're a critical thinker, you can
Okay.
take information other people, hard data other people come up with, and you can create different types of solutions. That's why Donald Trump got elected in 2016. He got elected because statistics like Borjas were concerning to Americans, and they did the obvious thing, which is vote for less immigration, okay? Because that obviously would help redistribute some of that money. I mean, forget immigration. There's no political will to raise taxes on the wealthy either. But that's another question.
Wait,
But
raising taxes on the wealthy?
I also want to
real quick,
dispel the myth.
raising taxes on the wealthy is one of the few things that all Americans unite on, even Republicans.
Yes,
so there
and
is
good
the
luck
political
getting
will for it.
Congress to do it. Good luck getting Congress to do it.
Well, maybe
But
under a
anyway,
Biden presidency it'll happen.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
We'll
All right,
see.
go ahead. Listen, let's finish this segment up, and then we'll let Destiny get a topic, and we'll let you get a topic. Yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
just give Mr. Destiny over here. I would like, for all you socialists listening, all you people that follow Vosh, who's a phony socialist. He, one thing I'll say aside from everything, I don't want to talk bad about the guy. He's not here, but I saw a
I
debate.
do,
with him.
but I'll resist. But yeah, go.
I saw
Go
a debate.
ahead.
I saw a debate with him and Sargon about immigration, and I saw that Vosh was quoting the Cato Institute for reasons why immigration is great for the country, and I'm like, bro, do you know what the Cato Institute is? For all you Vosh fans listening, all you angry Vosh fans, the Cato Institute also has studies that show that 10-year-olds in China working in India working in sweatshops is good for the economy. So this is an example of the most rapacious, evil, globalist capitalism on the planet.
Christ.
They are there to rationalize this kind of horrible, this horrible, inhumane system. And the Cato Institute is quoted by these phony socialists. No socialist who supports immigration is a true socialist. He's a neoliberal wearing red. That's all it is. He's no different than Destiny in many ways.
So,
So anyway, let me just get back to the topic quickly.
well, wait, hold on. You just like brought this whole
Found Kana and Morales, 2017 study. In 2001, the number of American workers displaced by foreign labor. This is, again, by the way, this is about the H-1B program, not about, because there's this bullshit talking point that it's only low-skilled workers. These are high-skilled workers. Many Americans want to work in tech because it's one of the highest-paying industries in this country, and it's suffering because of immigration. In 2001, they found, and this is before H-1Bs really exploded, they found that the number of American workers qualified for jobs were displaced by H-1B foreign labor approached 11%. 11% of Americans with STEM degrees, very expensive, indebted up their ass. They can't get jobs in STEM because foreigners are being imported to do the job. In the same year, they calculated that their wages would have been 5% higher that year if the H-1B visa program did not exist. This is a 2017 study, okay? Now, you can say, well, 5%, it's not a big deal, but if you're making 80 grand a year, 5% is a lot of money, okay? So that's, and this is probably an underestimation. Let's talk about construction. You know, in 1973, Destiny, a construction worker in California made $31.84 an hour. Today, a construction worker makes $25.97 an hour. That's almost $6 less. Well, this is a lot of money. This is not taking into account how much the median cost of living in California has risen since 1973. How about care workers, health workers? It says the demand for home care workers has risen 20%, and yet their wages don't go up. Male care worker wages have decreased by 16%. From 2005 to 2015. And this correlates perfectly with an influx of immigrant labor in the field, which is estimated to be 20%. This is one of the lowest paying industries in the country, even though there's a massive demand for it. American workers could be doing these jobs. This is my point, Destiny, is that this is not.
Can we do this? Like, can we move like point by point, because like you misquote so much stuff that it makes me weak to like not be able to respond to it. So like for this 2017 paper that you cited, right? Like, so in just reading the abstract at the end here, right? In the absence of immigration, wages for U.S. computer scientists would have been 2.6% to 5.1% higher, and employment in computer science for U.S. workers would have been 6.1% to 10.8% higher in 2001. This is a pretty old data set. The tech industry has changed quite a bit since then, but sure, in 2001. On the other hand, well, tech has also grown monumentally in the past 20 years. I'm not sure if you've been here or not. I don't know how old you are.
Have H-1B visas grown compared to the growth, actually?
Well, I don't know. What do you think? Do you have those numbers on hand, or are you just going to make an assumption?
Absolutely. They're a little down now, but the tech industry is constantly fighting. You have situations like AT&T where they're using this. They're bringing people in and getting the American workers. This is thousands of American workers. They have to train their replacements. Okay, I mean, this is not a joke. This is not something I'm just making up. This is happening in this country.
Okay, so I would need to see the numbers, because like STEM degrees, including comp sci degrees, pay like a significantly like higher sum of money than other comparable forms of degrees. Like the compensation for these degrees is astronomical. So the idea that these workers are being hurt, maybe in some marginal sense they are. In the one paper that you quoted that I was able to find, and I would have to go through and find. I'm willing to bet you're probably misquoting or misciting every single thing you're bringing up, based on what you said so far.
Say that doesn't mean it's true.
Well, but every single thing I've looked into has been true. So, for instance, at the end of the abstract
you
of this,
just read the paper and it gives me the truth there. So
I wasn't done reading. You started cutting me off.
Okay.
So the ending part of this is, on the other hand, complements in production benefited substantially from immigration, and immigration also lowered prices and raised the output of IT goods by between 1.9 and 2.5%, thus benefiting consumers. Finally, firms in the IT sector also earned substantially higher profits due to immigration. So it sounds to me, if these workers are coming in and making these firms like so far more profitable. And if consumers are saving money, sounds like we just need to tax people that use H-1Bs a little bit more, like Borjas himself even suggested, and that would fix all of these problems. We would take
How would it fix problems? How is taxing a corporation alone going to fix the problem of someone who can't get it, who's passed up for a job?
This doesn't exist. This person doesn't exist. All of these people.
So American workers aren't. That wasn't a big campaign issue in 2016 for Trump.
The big campaign. No, it wasn't. 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 It was not a big. No.
Okay.
If it was a big issue, then why would hashtag learn to code have been so controversial? The issue was that construction workers and people that worked in manufacturing in the Rust Belt were losing jobs, not people losing jobs to H-1B visas. That is absolutely not true. Don't tell me that there were all these middle-class workers, these white-collar workers.
H-1B workers, Trump rally, and you will see them. They were speaking at Trump events. This is a problem. And it's one of the problems that got Trump the election despite all of his flaws.
It's just
and you're just sitting there.
It's just not. We can all right now look up median wages paid to people with these tech degrees. They're fucking massive. The wage premium
and they should be higher.
And they're not being. They're already paid higher than most equivalent workers around the world. What do you mean? These people are compensated higher than every other equivalent degree in our economy.
Gentlemen,
saved on. Okay.
Go ahead. Let's just rein it in. 1 point to you, Stryker. 1 point to you, Destiny. I'll read the super chats and then we'll move to the next segment.
Sure. My only point is that as of 2018, the tech sector is literally begging for jobs. If anybody in this fucking chat right now works for, or I'm sorry, goes to university and is working at comp sci, companies are constantly advertising, trying to bring people in from the schools into places to work. This idea that H-1B visas have flooded out the entire economy and that no one is hiring these workers is laughable. Maybe with a data set from 2001, when people were still using Ask Jeeves and Yahoo, maybe back then it had a more detrimental or deleterious impact. But hold on, my point. But
wait, let him finish, and then I'll let you finish, and then we'll move on.
Tech workers are some of the most in-demand fucking jobs in the world. There is like a literal 500,000 job deficit right now of tech workers, which is why companies are begging for H-1Bs, because we don't even have enough tech workers in the United States to fill these fucking jobs.
All right, now Stryker, don't interrupt him. Just let him finish, and then I'll read these, and then we'll go to the next. Go ahead.
So here's the thing. Okay. The profits that the so-called consumer savings, first of all, I would, even if that were true, I would say maybe tech stuff should be a little more expensive if it means American workers get the job and they're compensated for what their work is worth. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that the companies that go out there and say, oh, we have a labor shortage, we can't find people to work. The way you can, if significant numbers of STEM workers are not working in STEM, okay, I can find you the statistic. It's actually pretty big number. Would you like me to find it for you? Or do you need the pedantic? Okay.
I'm super curious where all these STEM degree holders are that can't earn any money.
Okay,
yeah,
I'll do that in a minute.
Okay.
I'll look it up. But here's the thing.
Yes.
The point is that the companies pretend that they have a labor shortage so that they can pressure the government to expand the H-1B system. Okay, and so this is the story for everything. You see also other industries. They're like, we can't find people to work. We can't. Well, why haven't they tried increasing benefits and pay? Because if you increase benefits and pay for a job, you're going to get people that are willing to move around the country. You're going to get people. These problems are essentially created by the companies themselves. They're not really suffering from this. It's not. Another thing too is that the quality of work, just anecdotally, the quality of work. I mean, the reason why Windows is garbage and every year it gets worse is because it's a bunch of Indians fucking making it, and they work for cheap and they're not as good. The reason why basically, all these tech companies are just sitting on properties that they just keep remaking over and over and over, like the iPhone. This is they're fucking out of ideas. And why are they out of ideas? Well, they don't hire white workers. They hire all these Indians to do it. That's just anecdotal. Listen, I'm not saying that I have hard facts and numbers to support that, but anecdotally, that's what I mean. And when it comes to the hard numbers, I'll just finish with this. To deny that the H-1B system was being used to not fill in gaps, but to replace Americans. Anyone can go on YouTube, look up H-1B or Google H1B Trump rally or whatever, you will see the people that were working for Disney, AT&T, all these big major companies in America. They were working in tech or STEM or whatever, and they were being replaced, and they were taught to, they're forced to train their replacements, which is the most undignified and humiliating thing. And it's all done to save on labor costs. Okay. And most of those profits, my friend, do not go back to the consumer. Those profits go to the fucking shareholders. And you might think that's morally right, but I don't think it is. I think that workers, white workers in this country, should benefit from our companies. We created the infrastructure in this country. We're the ones, you know what? If India is full of so many geniuses, why is their country a fucking shithole? Okay, that's what I would say. So, you know what? That's just me finishing up.
There are so many weird stories here.
Wait.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
The fact that Microsoft's core workers are fucking Indians because you see like commercials with IT guys like answering fucking calls or scamming people. Jesus fuck. Sorry. Go ahead, bro.
All right. Yeah. Now you're gonna have the opportunity to raise the next point, so it's up to you. And also, I mean, I had this slated for 2 hours. There's 30 minutes left. So if you guys want to go longer, I'm fine with that. But I just wanted to put that out there. More than fine with it, actually. But the real Tinchy says Destiny versus Ricada win. Nick isn't dumb like Stryker. Robert 32 says if Destiny can talk faster, I might believe him. Chromatron says 5-hour stream. Come on, press 1 for 5-hour stream. King Porgy says nobody wants to go to the West Coast. Gross. Well, I was trying to go to the West Coast actually on Thursday, but they're not going to let me. So King Porgy says Destiny drags Stryker into the weeds, and Stryker is too high T. Excuse me. IT, I almost said because of the last conversation. Too high T to avoid the trap. Quote the stream. BG White says, can the guest agree to shit on Kelly Loeffler, whatever the fuck her name is? And I did intend to bring that up, the Senator's insider trading, and I've made my feelings known on Twitter about that. Not a fan, but maybe we'll get to that. Ober Gropen Führer just subscribed for 6 months. Thank you. Bethica73 says Destiny Kang of fast talking bullshit. Wowzers. A helpful friend says, is the Spurg out for Adderall addict at 3 now? Pensive Cowboy says, haha, money printer go burr. Pug Dog says, talk about Zog. Keep the eyes on the ball, Striker. Mega Meme says, money printer brr. Arcade Outpost says, who remembers AOL movie phone? I actually do. I'm that old. Pensive Cowboy says, money comes back when we send it. Don't tell Israel. Arcade Outpost says, Destiny Machine go brr. Pensive Cowboy says, I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. Robert 32 says, Destiny talks fast. Some poops are fast sometimes. Harewood Silvatici says, Destiny is the Shapiro sound-alike. I just got here. Robert 32 says, Trump was elected because white people are fed up. Arcade Outpost says, stop debating Saint GDP. Culture is more important. Arcade Outpost says, never drink in Destiny. King Porgy says, unmute Ozzy Mozzie. He's a good boy, Ralph. No, he's a piece of shit, and he will never be unmuted. But I'll take that as it is. Anon Semper says, Michelle Malkin pinned Twitter thread about H1B. Now it's your turn, Destiny. Go ahead.
I don't even know where to start. It sounds like you literally called it. It sounds like you called into Apple tech support on your fucking iPhone, and you heard an Indian on the phone, and you think that like everybody in these fucking boardroom meetings or everybody like working on like the core software is like some fucking guy that they fucking like imported from fucking India. So like everybody knows.
Yeah,
well, no, wait,
right.
what do you
Indians
mean?
don't work at Microsoft.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that they do in some positions, but the idea that core software is being developed by like random fucking immigrants is just so hilarious. It's always funny because the only people that make these claims are people that have no fucking firsthand experience in this industry at all. Like if you talk like, and the idea that these people should offer the idea that people, well, hold on, these are all you stack all of these bullshit arguments on top of each other.
We gotta hit the JQ, buddy.
We'll get there, I'm sure. Okay, the idea that like companies can just increase benefits, like the upper end of the wages starting out for like just comp sci majors is literally upwards of 100 to 150 thou. Like there are so many fucking startups and tech firms you can hire at. What do you think they're gonna do? Just like if they just offer enough benefits, like randomly fucking comp sci people are just gonna like puff out of fucking thin air or some shit? Like it takes time to get these degrees. That's why schools are like dramatically trying to up how many people they can train for these fucking jobs. The idea that like hiring more white workers at like a fucking Apple store to be like an iPhone genius is going to make like more iPhone ideas or something. Like all of these like anecdotal, these weird things are like so fucking strange and like are clearly coming from somebody that has like no in-industry experience and isn't even familiar with like the broad statistics related to it. Gotcha. Like anybody that works in any of these industries or anybody that like goes to school for any of these industries knows how hilariously fucking wrong you are. They know that these companies are dramatically advertising to pull in workers for their jobs. They know that the wages paid to these people is dramatically fucking high. Like every pretty much.
Next topic,
Yeah,
buddy?
we
Come
can
on.
move. Yeah, that's fine. If you don't walk back everything you said, we can
Come
move
on.
on because almost
I'm not
every single
walking
thing you
back
said was
anything.
wrong. Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Just
What are our next topics? Jesus.
Okay, you know what?
yeah,
Go, Ralph. I'm sorry. Since we're running out of time, can we hit the JQ real quick? I don't want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
don't want to cuck Destiny, but let's say. So my contention, Destiny, is that the Jewish community has enormous amounts of power over the United States of America, and this is seen in the finance industry. It's seen in the media, but it's very, very interesting how our foreign policy is particularly in the pocket of the Jews. And before you dismiss that as a mindless conspiracy theory, I can name you a number of foreign policy and geopolitical academics that agree with me. John Mearsheimer, Lawrence Wilkerson, Paul Pillar, Chaz Freeman, Eli Clifton.
Can we talk about
Andrew
positions?
J.
I don't know.
Matthews,
Just
all
dropping.
these- all
I don't know.
these-
Just
all these-
dropping a bunch of names as opposed.
Well,
to
these are because I know that credentialism is very important to you. So that's why I'm saying
It
these are
hasn't, but I
people
haven't used that at all.
One way or
you
these
literally
people
just
in one way or
invented that
another have
position.
said that
Sure.
Zionists.
Just
that
to be clear,
Zionists
you
and
literally
Jews
just
have
invented
large
that position for
disproportionate
me to
influence.
try to sound like you're making a
Okay,
good
I'm not
argument.
going to finish. All right,
Okay,
go ahead,
yeah,
babble.
Sure.
Go.
So you just invented that claim. I haven't made any big deal about people being credentialed or whatever. You just are really excited to throw out 5 names you've memorized for the Jewish question. So just to be clear, I don't
Okay.
give a fuck about this guy
You don't
is super
care?
credentialed
Okay.
or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead. We can talk about
Fair
the
enough.
actual
Fair
ideas
enough.
and not
Fair
just
enough.
throwing out
Fair
random
enough.
names. Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm just saying that because the reason is that what turns a conspiracy theory for a neoliberal kind of person that doesn't think for themselves like you, what turns a conspiracy theory into a fact is if the people in the academy or intellectuals agree. So
Well,
these
some,
are
a
people
few that
that
you've
study
cited.
this. These are a number of people that study this stuff for a living, and in their careers they have said, and this is despite all the major institutional backlash that they've risked and gotten for it.
Academics
They
get
have said
institutional
That
backlash all
Zionists,
the time.
that the Jewish lobby in America essentially dictates American foreign policy. I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, let's talk about it. Like, what kind of foreign policy are you talking about? Like, let's be a little bit more specific.
Talk
So, for instance,
about-
when you talk about
talk-
when you talk about Mearsheimer, right? Like, so I'm assuming you're talking about. I know that he wrote some stuff about AIPAC, but like that doesn't even talk to the public, right? That's a lobby that literally only talks to policymakers. So, do you want to specifically talk about like decisions that Congress makes insofar as like doing foreign policy, or what? Like, let's be a little bit more specific.
Well, I
in terms of-
want to ask you if the fact that the donors, the biggest donors to both parties, Jewish, if that has any role on whether politicians will listen to AIPAC. Do you think there might be anything to that?
No, because the numbers just don't really pan out. So, like, I kind of looked into this because I was curious because I figured we would talk about this, right? So, the top 10 donors, Jewish and non-Jewish, gave $50 million, okay, in the last presidential election cycle. And the total amount of Jewish donors gave between 100 to 160 million, right? The total spending in those campaigns was $2.5 billion. In 2012, Jewish donors comprised about 6% of spending to all presidential campaigns compared to their 2% representation in the population. Like, yeah, were they overrepresented? Were they... So Jews make up about 2% of the population. They comprise about 6% of spending on the presidential election.
6% of spending. Show me your numbers. The 2012 election?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look into that. But I am more familiar with the 2016 election.
Okay.
Where the two biggest donors for Hillary Clinton, it was one of them is Haim Saban. He's an Israeli. He gave Hillary Clinton a lot of money.
What does a lot of money mean?
He was the top donor.
What does a lot of money mean?
Well, I can look up the exact number.
Well, so that could mean like $10 million, or that could mean like $1 billion. Like, what do you?
Well, if you're the number one donor, if you're the number one donor to a candidate, is that person gonna? Because if you look at the Hillary Clinton's WikiLeaks, you'll see that Haim Saban is constantly emailing her on what to say about Israel. That's in her WikiLeaks. So, maybe that money does, because I remember you said something very stupid, which is that lobbyists don't have influence on policy.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be the case, yeah.
Yeah.
But we
So-
still haven't established any. Like, I'm curious, how much money do you think that he's? Because if this guy's donated like $5 million, I'm curious if you think that's enough to like dictate like American foreign policy, ignoring the
You think
fact that
it might change your mind on certain policies regarding Israel.
not
If
really.
someone
I
gives you
think
$5
that
million?
probably the overwhelming support
I-
that Americans in general have for Israel is probably more determining of our foreign policy related to Israel than like some individual lobbyist, some Secretary of State, or somebody running for president.
What'd you say about?
I
what
think
has
that the
influence over-
overwhelming support that Americans have for Israel is probably more relevant to our foreign policy decisions than
Really?
some donor of Hillary Clinton. Yeah.
Well, Americans overwhelmingly support many things. They support, I know you might dispute the immigration thing. I mean, I think there's overwhelming support for that, but you're going to dispute that.
Yeah, because the numbers don't back it up. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you're gonna have like the numbers that say, would you deport the Mexican children?
No,
or
the
something
numbers
that
are how
people might-
important do you think immigration is, or like the racial makeup of the United
Well,
States?
how about Medicare for all? Like Medicare for all is very popular with both parties.
No, it's
and
not.
Yet people,
No, it's
people
not.
don't get that.
It's not very popular with both parties.
Look at the Democrat exit polls and increasingly look at Republican polls that say people like it.
Yep,
You
and
know
if you
what-
look
you know
at
what else-
and if
you
you
know
look
what
at if you look at well, hold on, because you made a wrong claim. If you look at KFF polls or people that poll like related to healthcare policy, you find that one, the majority of people don't even know what Medicare for all means, and two, you find that the people's reception to Medicare for all differs dramatically based on how you pose the question. So, for instance, if I ask
Right, that's
Americans,
okay.
how do you feel about a government program that gets rid of all private insurance? That's like 22% popular. If I say, how do you feel about a government program that covers all Americans? That's like 74% popular. So
Sure.
the idea
Okay,
that
fine.
Americans overwhelming.
I'll
Okay,
meet
sure.
you. I'll meet you halfway.
Okay, sure.
I'll meet you halfway. Let's say the one that all Americans are covered by a government program.
Okay.
Well, that's not being turned into policy, right? Taxing billionaires is popular. It's not turned into policy. Regulating banks is popular, not turned into policy. Americans, Republicans more actually, are souring on America's foreign wars. And yet we keep having them. And Trump is antagonizing Iran. There's probably going to be a war in the second term. I can't say for sure. But that stuff's not popular. So the point I'm making is that why is it that suddenly Israel, quote, being overwhelmingly popular is the explanation for why it's a bipartisan consensus? Like, I really doubt that the people that vote for Bernie Sanders are pro-Israel. Right?
Wait, hold on, real quick,
so-
because this is how like all of this works, and just building bullshit claim after bullshit claim after bullshit claim. Like the tax cuts that Trump did were overwhelmingly popular. This idea that people were against them, Republicans, is just not true. This idea that foreign policy doesn't buckle to pressure at home. I mean, we literally just left Afghanistan in fucking shambles. Okay, and we are like basically completely
20
threw away.
years.
We basically completely threw away like everything that we had in Iraq, pulling into that country as well. Now, I'm not. Now, I know a lot of people might misconstrue this as I'm pro Afghan or Iraq war or whatever. However, there is massive domestic pressure to get us out of these countries, and our leaders actually did. Like, we stopped supporting like fucking rebels and shit in Syria due to the effects that was happening in Europe and because of foreign policy at home. Like, we absolutely have to deal with pressure at home related to our foreign policy. The idea that we don't is laughable. Like, it's a huge part of our foreign policy.
Oh, in 2016, Haim Saban. Let me name you the two biggest contributors to the Democrats and Republicans in that ran in 2016. Okay, there's the Pritzkers gave $16 million to Hillary. The Pritzkers are Zionist Jews. Saban Capital Group, that's Haim Saban's group, $12 million. Paloma Partners is run by a Jew, $21 million. News Web Corps, I'm not sure if that's a Jew, but that's $11 million. Soros Fund Management, $10 million. These are the top donors of Hillary Clinton. If you look at Donald Trump, you get Sheldon Adelson. Now, what do Sheldon Adelson and Haim Saban, a big Democrat donor, Sheldon Adelson, a big GOP donor. What do they have in common? And by the way, this is just a Hillary Clinton. This is not just about the two candidates, but also like the Zionists. Let me just give you some numbers here. All in all,
can we like make
hold
an
on a
argument? You're just
second,
like
hold on a
naming
second, hold
names
on a
and
second.
throwing
Hold
out
on,
random
let me
numbers.
finish-
Like, you haven't
let
made
me
an
finish
argument
my
yet.
point because you know,
You're
let
not
me finish
making a
my
point, but go ahead.
Let me finish my point. So the top donors, these are the names of the donors that gave $1 billion together to Hillary Clinton. Dustin Moskovitz, the Pritzkers, George Soros, the Loffers, Donald Sussman runs Paloma Partners, gave $21 million. Haim and Cheryl Sabin, Daniel Abraham, James Simons, Okay, you see a pattern here, buddy? You see a pattern? They're all fucking Jews, and they collected $1 billion together. They're all Zionist Jews. Maybe some would argue George Soros isn't one.
So you're telling me that Hillary Clinton's campaign raised over $1 billion from Jews?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just looking because basically every single source. Wait, real quick. So like the number that I'm looking at right now. So Hillary Clinton's campaign on its own raised $623 million in 2016. The party and joint fundraising committees raised another $600 million, and then super PACs raised $200 million. So of the $1.4 billion that Hillary raised, you're telling me $1 billion of that came from Jews. You really think that's accurate?
Yes, largely from Zionist Jews.
Okay, I would. Considering every single source you've given me so far has either disagreed with you or just been outright wrong.
I'll figure out how to link it to you.
But how about walk me through the next part of this? Yeah, walk me through the next part of this.
Okay, the next part of this is that Donald Trump, he got his money from Bernie Marcus, Sheldon Adelson. These were some of the biggest contributors to Trump. In fact, they were the biggest contributors to Trump and the Republican Party, which together got hundreds of millions of dollars from Sheldon Adelson in particular. Sheldon Adelson is a hard line Israel hawk. My question to you, Destiny, is if you raise this kind of money from Jews who openly say, Haim Saban says, I am a one policy guy, Israel. That's what he says. And he's a Democrat donor. And then you have Sheldon Adelson. No, the guy was literally sitting in on Benjamin Netanyahu's trial. So these people are basically agents of the state of Israel. They give money in the hundreds of millions to our presidential candidates. And you're going to sit here and tell me that this has nothing to do with America's Israel policy?
No, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that because most Americans support Israel, the politicians do as well. It's possible.
You're just going to lie. Okay.
What?
You're just going to lie.
I'm not lying. I mean, we can point at tons of random
you don't actually
connections
believe
of people.
that.
Can you show me can you draw a link? Like tell me a policy that's not popular with the American people that these politicians have pushed for that show that there's some clearly conspiratorial effort behind the scenes to
Where
enact
do I
policy?
start?
What?
Where do I start? Okay, the H-1B program is so unpopular, even the Democrats were forced to vote against it, and yet there's still talk about expanding it. Let's talk about the Iraq War, which was basically started by a bunch of Jews at PNAC, who again in the Bush era were also, I don't have the statistics on hand because they're older, but
wait, how do Jews push the H-1B program?
Well, actually they do, because guess who runs Facebook? Guess who runs Google?
What does Mark Zuckerberg have to do with the H-1B program? So you're telling me that
you ever heard? Let me show you something. FWD.us. You ever heard of that thing?
What about
It's a one-issue lobby for more H-1B visas, funded by Mark Zuckerberg. You ever heard of this?
And how much money do they spend on lobbying?
See, you're just doing. What does it matter? You said
because if they spend $500,000 a year on lobbying, it doesn't really matter that much.
What does Mark Zuckerberg have to do with H-1B program? And I'm showing you one of the H-1B lobbies in Capitol Hill is literally funded by him. And on top of that, he also funds politicians funded by Google and Facebook. Also, like Mike Lee, also push for H-1B visas.
I think it's funny.
And you're just like, whoa, what's the exact number?
I think it's funny that earlier you were so happy to rattle off a ton of names and numbers because you've got your little dialogue tree that you're prepared for. And then when I just push you for a couple of questions, can I just finish one point? I know that you are really excited to do the JQ shit because it's you got it all memorized or whatever. But you're telling me I'm not mad at all. I think it's funny that you're implying there needs to be a conspiracy for the largest tech company owner to push for more H-1B visas.
Conspiracy? What's a conspiracy?
It's not a conspiracy. It sounds to me like the owners. It sounds to me like if you tell me the owners, you just talked for 30 minutes on Jewish conspiracy shit. You spent all this time. If I'm
an Israeli citizen and I give Hillary Clinton or the Republican Party $100 million, you could say that's a conspiracy all you want. But it doesn't change the fact that it's a fact.
You spent all this time throwing numbers and names at me to tell me that tech companies are trying to push to get more tech labor into the country.
The topic.
I'm not changing. You're the one that brought up H-1B citizens or H-1B visas.
No, you said why are unpopular policies
No, whoa. You are pivoting so much. You can't stand one point. Let's talk about
action.
H-1B visas. Do you really think it's that surprising that
No,
company
let's
owner?
stay on foreign policy, because I could tell you don't have an answer for this. Like, you know,
We can-
I want you to say
I'll
on the
talk about
I
any-
want you to
I'll
say
talk
on the
about any
record
policy
that
you
I
want.
want you to say on the record that you can be laughed off the fucking face of the earth that if a bunch of Zionist Jews give the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign $1 billion in 2016, that this will have no impact on their view of Israel. I want you to say this on the fucking record so that we can all sit here and laugh at you.
Sure. Okay. So
Go ahead.
we'll run completely away from the H-1B topics. Then you realize how stupid that is. I don't think that Jewish citizens or Israeli people or whatever donating money to American campaigns that are running for president, I don't think are having these massive changes in foreign policy that's running contrary to American opinion on Israel. No, of course not. There's no evidence for that whatsoever. Israel is massively unpopular with both the Democratic and the Republican Party, the voters themselves, not just policymakers.
Here, let me pull up some. Remember, the Democrats vote as a block for Israel, right? They greenlight it. So it's a bipartisan. They're all clapping together. So let's look at some statistics. Are you familiar with the statistics for Democrats? Like, would you agree that there's a very strong streak of anti-Israel sentiment in the Democratic Party?
Of anti-Israeli sentiment in the Democratic Party.
Anti-Israel sentiment.
What do you mean by anti-Israel? Like
These
you're saying
like
like
white
pro-Palestine
liberals
shit or
and
what?
certain colored people. It says here, in 2017, this is a poll that's been published on Newsweek. Democratic support for Israel has dropped from 42% to 27%. So 27% of registered Democrats support Israel. Meanwhile, every Democrat, maybe with some exceptions, maybe Ilhan Omar or something, will vote for more aid to Israel. Okay? So how the fuck do you explain that, other than Haim Saban's money, other than the money of these Zionist Jews? How do you explain that?
Wait,
they're not fulfilling the wish of their constituents. Why are they doing it then?
What do you? I don't even know what the fuck you're asking me right now. So, can you phrase that in like a question? I have no idea what the fuck you just asked.
My question is, I just cited a statistic: 27%. This is in 2017. This is a poll taken. It's on Newsweek. I can link it to you if you'd like.
Yeah, can you do that? Yeah, throw the link in the chat. Yeah, just so I can see what you're talking about. Yeah.
27%. This Newsweek is just an annoying site because it just blares music when you get on it. But 27% of Democratic voters do not support Israel. I mean, support Israel. 27% support Israel amongst Democratic voters. So that means that the majority do not.
Okay, so
hold on.
So wait. So the poll said wait. So what you just said So what you just said was a lie. So Democrats are divided on the Mideast situation as 27% say their sympathies lie more with the Israelis and 26% say their sympathies lie more with the Palestinians, with 46% undecided. So what you just said was a lie. It's not that the majority of them are against it, it's that most are a plurality is undecided. This is why I can't trust anything you bring up. This is why I'm asking you for sources, because you're misciting almost everything you bring up.
Let's meet halfway then.
No. Hold on. I'm not meeting you halfway. What you just said was a bold-faced fucking lie because you hoped I wouldn't look up your poll.
I said the majority of Democrats
were against them,
like Israel.
Yeah, and that's not what undecided means.
I can find other statistics for that, but here's the thing.
27% say their sympathies lie more with Israelis. 26% say their sympathies lie more with the Palestinians. Also, this is over one very specific instance, not like the support for Israel in general. And with 46%,
I can find you other statistics.
Maybe you should have found those. Hey, maybe you should have found those. Maybe you should have found those for this conversation.
Let's get back to the bigger point.
Maybe you should have found those for this conversation and not thrown me one that you misquoted.
You know, the idea that Democratic voters are not fond of Israel is not even controversial. You're just being tactical about this. But here's the thing. So if let's say 46%, are undecided, and 26% are pro-Palestinian, that means the majority of Democrats either don't care about Israel or don't support it.
Sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw a poll here from 2019. Okay.
Is this the question
was thinking about the relationship between the United States and Israel. Do you think the U.S. is too supportive?
Gentlemen, we can't understand. Can we talk?
I can't just have him fucking lie about a poll.
I know.
And then
No, it's fine.
Hey,
guys, it's fine.
He's just literally misquoting the fuck out of everything. Why are you making
a baby voice? It's not a criticism
okay?
of either person. I'm just saying, I usually let it go. But
Oh,
let's,
I don't
let's
have an
go on
argument.
to-
Stop lying.
I know that you're mad
All
because
right.
you're literally
Fucking
getting called out on every stupid fucking thing you've said.
mad.
Here,
I just
I
think
threw like two. Here's a
you're-
Gallup poll. Here's a polling report. This idea that Americans don't support Israel is fucking hilariously uninformed. You being a fucking Nazi, you should know this, right? Like at the very least, you could hit me with arguments about how like, well, maybe the media is controlling Americans to be pro-Israel. Like we could go into that. I've got a whole bunch of stuff prepared on media. But like this idea.
Go to a diner or a bar and ask people about what they care about. Israel is not even in the top 100 issues. You're fucking.
We're not
you're full of
talking about
shit.
if it's in the top
You're
issues. That's
full
a
of
totally
shit,
separate
and
question.
you cape for the Jews.
No, what I'm
because
saying
you,
is
you
that
want to
like,
live your
oh my
life playing
God.
video games
Holy
for money.
shit. Well, right now I'm
And
living my
you
life
know
shitting
that
on
if
some
you
dumb
say the
fuck
truth
Nazi
about you,
that wanted to
you'll
open up a
lose
conversation
your
about
payment
music.
processor and your platform. So, give me a break, man.
What is the break, dude? You on almost every single source you've given me
You're gonna
tonight,
sit there and
you've
deny
either been
that
wrong, unfamiliar with the
giving
source, or you've
Democrats $1
misquoted
billion.
it.
Oh no, they don't support Israel because
Well,
of that.
I'm
No.
not. You know what?
No,
I'm willing to
people
bet that if I
laugh
look
at you,
into those
man.
numbers, they're not even true.
what a
Because
joke.
literally everything you've given me that I've looked up has been false. Like holy shit, dude! Like the image of fucking albums and stuff. 4chan people argue this shit better than you. Like you're an embarrassment to fucking Nazis. Do you
Yeah,
realize
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Do you realize how
yeah,
low
yeah.
the bar is? I could
Give me
probably
a
find a
break,
random
come on.
dude. I bet you if I were to go and
Yeah.
check the fucking poll threads right now, there are
Dude,
people on there
fucking-
saying Stryker sucks
fucking-
dick at
you-
arguing
you-
for
you-
third
who
positionism.
cares?
That fucking
Who cares? It
Enoch
doesn't
was
matter.
giving better arguments
What I-
than
what I-
fucking Stryker
no.
could. That he's
Here's
literally
the
falling
thing, man.
apart right now to
Here's
a
the
guy that
thing.
sucks
You're-
dick
you're-
that
you're-
plays
you're-
video games professionally. That's
Well,
how much of an
that's your
embarrassment
business.
you are
I
right
don't
now.
wanna know
Like,
about
holy
that,
shit,
but-
do you realize how much you're falling apart in this
come on,
conversation?
man.
It's absolutely
Come on.
unfucking believable.
All right, man.
Jesus
you
Christ.
we gotta maybe, I don't know, man. It's hard to argue
I-
with someone that's tripping balls on Adderall.
Like I can
I
shoot.
don't
know
what's
We,
wrong.
maybe
Look,
we should
we
trade
don't
sources
know.
before that. I can help you put together a better argument. Because fuck, this has been an embarrassment. Like
Bro,
I
being
thought
a
this was going to be
condescending
fucking
faggot
hard,
doesn't
dude.
make you
Oh,
right.
wait a minute.
I
wait
thought
a
this was
minute,
going to be
wait a minute.
difficult. Holy shit.
Being a
Let's-
condescending hysterical.
Alright.
tweet. All right.
Okay, that's fair. We understood what you meant. Let me read these. Maybe we can do another segment or two if you guys have the time. Maybe we can just again, I love people talking shit and screaming and all that, but it's just a certain point where you're screaming over each other. It's
Alright.
I understand it's fiery. I'm the last one to talk, just this past weekend I had my own thing. So I understand completely, but let's just one at a time. If you can. That's the only thing. Not a criticism of either one. You're both doing it, to be quite honest, but let me just read these and we'll try to do another segment or two if that's okay. Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay. Harold Silvatiti says UK trades from EU came in, lived in a 4-room, I guess, apartment or flat. Pound sent home. Brits with families to support can't compete. Cheeseburger 6 says, Destiny, will you publicly deny using Adderall? I don't even know. Look, I'm be the last one to talk about somebody's
Listen,
habits.
I love psychedelics and I fucking love MDMA, but I don't do like Adderall or Ritalin or any of that shit. I don't get anything out of it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I did drink a Red Bull
Harold-
though, so somebody had that. Maybe that's helping me a little bit. Somebody said I was hyped up on that shit. Maybe I've had too much caffeine.
Harold Silvatiti says, can't afford to compete at these lower wage rates. Then he says, UK family with mortgage. He used the pound symbol, pounds greater than EU, living in 4-room. It's hard to decipher some of these, but I'm trying. Then he says, why does chat say Eric is drunk? He doesn't sound drunk. He doesn't sound drunk to me either.
It's the haters. It's the haters.
I know how drunks sound, by the way. But
Did you check the
Ted
last
Wayne-
name on some of those donations? You need to trace
I'm-
back
I'm
their
getting-
lineage.
I
You
am
should have
getting drunk
23andMe
right
submissions for every donation to check for that Ashkenazi shit or whatever. You don't want them to fucking.
23andMe. That'll be the new standard to donate here. Ted Wang says, Stryker, whited head. Of course, you know who this is, but
okay.
he
Skip
says,
that.
why I have to read it. He gave me $10.
All right.
Why did head of TRS security say he became an informant when he got caught selling heroin? I don't.
Well,
I've-
if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
All right, there we go. Arcade Outpost says Israel is popular because of subversion. Schofield Bible. King Porgy says, okay, you don't know 100% about X, therefore irrelevant. Quote, some gay internet stripper. Wildbagger says, thanks for the great week from the podcast gang. Shout out to the podcast. Of course, we're available on Apple and Spotify and Castbox and everywhere else. Jean says, Destiny, I love certain thing and my certain thing. Tiny. I won't read that. Tyrone88 says, Destiny is bisexual. You know what that means? Not really, but Pinochet's Rolfacopter says, I'm a fascist and Destiny won this debate. John says, I think Destiny has a pretty small brain. Harold Silvatici says, sorry, difficult to fit questions in 50 or 100 characters. Yeah, it is. I wish they would up the limit a little bit, especially when you put in a fucking $10, but whatever. Proud and Frank Denier says, this is disgusting. I think it's actually been pretty fun, but that's just my opinion. Let's see. Inspector Blower says, tell Destiny it looks like adult puberty hit him like a ton of simps. Big Time 47 says, Destiny doesn't know what hard work what hard work is. He has this, by the way, I'm reading this verbatim. Destiny doesn't know what hard work is. He has a degree in music and plays video games. Stryker is 100% right about H-1B visas. They are destroying job prospects for white American STEM students. Spurg Lama says the autism of the capitalist has no room for nuance or human empathy. Screw these pigs who only care about GDP.
Just for reference, I don't actually have a music degree. I had to drop out of school because I was working too much, but close there.
But you were a music major, but you just...
Yeah, I was, right? It's kind of funny that I'm like so privileged, but I had to drop out because mom and dad didn't pay for school to me like the donors mom and dad probably did, but
I actually did get my degree, but it was not easy because I was having a fun time there in college. Big Time 47 says, Destiny is really good at regurgitating my economics 101 class. Very lame, arguing in bad faith, obviously on amphetamines or just unhinged. Kegs for Kavanaugh says, question Destiny. You say our dollars have to come back in the form of capital investment. So, Destiny, you can see that when we run trade deficits, foreigners will take those dollars and use them to buy up our real estate and corporations. How is that good?
Foreign investment is good. It causes other countries to have like a higher interest in what goes on in the United States, and that foreign investment doesn't always mean they get controlling shares of said companies as well. Just because money comes back in the form of foreign investment doesn't mean they're all of a sudden getting majority shares in every large company that they invest in. And it can also be used to buy goods and services as well.
Why shouldn't Americans control those? What kind of country is this that we sell our vital infrastructure to foreigners, even if it's just some shares?
Because by the virtue of comparative advantage, we get more goods and services by trading with other countries. Increase in liberalization. I can't even finish. We're not talking about things that are just GDP. We're talking about being able to afford shit like food, or being able to afford a fucking car, or being able to afford a computer. Maybe these are things you've never worried about. We didn't have computers and shit before. We didn't have cell phones before. What do you mean?
How did a country that was always protectionist like the United States of America, where it was illegal, believe it or not, in the 19th century for foreigners to own shares in American companies, how did that country feed its population?
I don't care if you want to go back to the beginning of the 19th century, those stock buybacks that you hated so much, those weren't just legal. Those were literally required by the American government so that companies were... So the companies wouldn't squander money. No, I know, but like if you want to go back to the 19th century and talk about econ policy, like America didn't always have things right. I mean, like you hate stock buybacks. That used to be fucking law. That was a mandate.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. I'm saying how did the country feed its population when foreigners, when the Chinese or whatever weren't shareholders in all these companies? How did they? Because you said, "Oh, these things they help you buy food and they help you get goods and services." So what I would say is, how did it feed its people back then? If foreigners were not allowed to buy shares in American companies,
because the year, I did make the claim. The year is 2020, and our goal for success is not simply, the current year. In the current year, can I answer the fucking question? Holy shit! I'm just going to keep talking and hope that he shuts the fuck up. So our bar for success. So our bar for success is not just feeding our fucking people. That's the dumbest fucking bar I can possibly think of.
You were the one that brought that up.
No. It's not just about feeding people. It's the idea that lower cost of goods, like for food, allows even poor people to buy things like cell phones or computers or cars. Food is more expensive
now than it was 30 years ago, bro.
Then how are we able to afford things? Then how are we able to afford things like cell phones or cars?
Now, guys, cheap trinkets are cheaper, sure.
Cheap trinkets, like access to the internet. That's just a cheap trinket to you,
dude. The internet was okay. Let's go. Come on.
Okay. All right. Ted Wang says, Fed strikers here to make Nazis look stupid. King Porgy says, reminder that Destiny claimed that lobbyists don't affect policy. By the way, that was a point that I've seen repeated. So I want to give you a chance to address that.
Yeah. So when you actually look get into the research for like how much lobbying impacts policy, if you look at how much is at stake with the U.S. economy, this is a $20 trillion economy. The amount of money actually spent lobbying is like hilariously small. Like I think in 2018, Exxon ExxonMobil posted profits in excess of like $40 billion. They spent like $10 million lobbying. This idea that lobbying is this highly profitable venture that a lot of these companies get involved in is just not borne out by any research.
I didn't say anything about ExxonMobil lobbying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So-
Are they not owned by Jews? I'm sorry. I mean, we could compare the amount of money that Facebook is spending, and then compare that to their revenue as well.
I never said that the energy industry was owned by Jews. I never said that.
Okay. I mean, well, whatever company you're talking about is owned by Jews. The amount of money they spend on lobbying is hilariously small. This idea that you get these massive returns on your money for lobbying is just not true. There have been a couple of like
Wall Street investment banks. Yeah, sure, bro. They don't fucking spend a shit ton of money on politicians.
Well, wait. Which Wall Street? Like, which ones are we talking about that we think spend all this money on lobbying? Okay, we can look it up.
Yeah, go ahead and look it up. I'm not talking about lobbying. I'm talking about political donations. You're going to sit here and say investment bankers don't donate to our politicians. Go look at fucking how much money Hillary Clinton got from Wall Street, bro. Are you fucking out of your mind?
And I just want to give you a chance to respond, Destiny, because I've seen this repeated, and it's something that you said.
Wait, oh my God, can I just real quick? So
do lobbyists affect things? I guess would be
why do they do it if they don't?
Well,
I will say that
that's just the thing.
Listen, wait.
They don't really do it.
Wait, I don't want to interpret. I'm just saying that that's a talking point that has come out from your last appearance on the show that, Destiny said lobbyists don't matter. They don't affect policy. I just want to give you a chance.
So real quick, the net earnings of Goldman Sachs was $10.46 billion in 2018. They spent $3 million lobbying. Like, these companies don't spend all that much money. Like, yeah, the numbers sound big to us. Oh my God, millions of dollars. But when you talk about the overall size of the U.S. economy, $20 trillion in GDP, when you talk about the total revenues of these companies that are, in excess of hundreds of billions or tens of billions, they don't really spend that much money lobbying. I wonder why. Maybe it's because the returns on that lobbying aren't as super hyped up as a lot of people say that they are.
Now, the alternate argument is it's really cheap to buy our politicians. I mean, that would be.
But if that was the case, then you would expect every new startup that pops up to just dump a ton of money into this like rent-seeking, like lobbying behavior. It just doesn't happen. Like for every one lobbyist that's working,
Wall Street gave Hillary Clinton. This is from CNBC. They gave her $27 million in 2016.
$27 million. And what are their total Wall Street profits? Are probably in the excess of what, like over 500 billion. What?
Well, it's like Ralph said. Hillary Clinton will sell her political pussy.
Don't put it on me. I'm being devil's advocate. I just want to put.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that Hillary Clinton will just sell out for $27 million. I mean, what's?
I mean, like Bernie Sanders himself raised like $20 million like in a single fucking month. Like the idea that this is enough money to turn an election is just stupid. It just isn't borne out in any data. It doesn't make any sense.
Why? So why do they do it? Why do they give them money then?
The reason why you give the money is because you're providing epistemic resources to your politicians in order to show them, like, hey, this is how like these types of impacts, or this is how this type of legislation impact us, and these are the arguments that you should or shouldn't make to your constituents. The idea is that
you're essentially agreeing.
No. There's a huge difference between donating this. No, you pay them because you think that they'll probably already agree with your position, and you're just providing facts. So, for instance, let's say that
this is a terrible hill to die on, man.
For anybody, sure. So real quick, I won't give this argument. If anybody's interested, you should just go and Google, like, how much money do these companies make? How much is spent on lobbying? What's the size of the U.S. economy? The answers will shock you.
It's like, if you're paying, it's like saying, I have $1 million, but it only costs $10,000 to do this. That means if to bribe a politician, local, say like I want to bribe someone, right? And I pay them $10,000 in a manila envelope. And then you say, but that bribe doesn't mean anything because you have $10 million. Like the reasoning there is ridiculous. Like, why would they give Hillary Clinton? Why would anyone give Hillary Clinton $27 million?
Why wouldn't politicians bribe? Why wouldn't politicians like fish for much higher bribes with so much at stake? With so much of the U.S. economy at stake, you think these people are going to settle for a couple $1 million? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, how are prices set? I mean, it's just this is what they charge. I mean, you ask, why don't you ask Hillary Clinton about why she charges so cheap?
Well, it's probably not a matter of what they charge. It's probably just that's how much it costs to develop the relationships that you need with these Congress people to provide resources for them when they go to make their decisions.
Okay, well, so that's exactly what I'm saying, and so you're just admitting that.
Okay, cool. And I'm saying that lobbies probably support politicians that are already mostly in line with their opinions anyway. They're just
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, cool. Okay. So they're not actually changing their opinions at all. They're just supporting people that are already. Okay, cool.
They're not changing.
I'm glad we agree. No, you just said we agree. I agree.
What they do is they find people that already agree with them and they give them a lot of money so they get elected. That's what they do. And that's exactly what a political donation is supposed to do. And the only difference between America and some third world hellhole where they give money under the table is that we actually make them the bribes public. That's really the only distinction here, bro. Okay? Because if you were to give Hillary Clinton $27 million off the record in a third world country, you would call that a bribe, right? But if it's in America and it's on open secrets, then no, it's actually this actual long-winded explanation that generally goes around the block.
Yeah. So do you think all lobbying should be illegal?
I am.
Do you think all lobbying should be illegal?
Yeah, I mean, it's just stupid.
Go ahead, say that again.
No,
Destiny,
I'm curious. Do you think that
hear.
all lobbying should be illegal?
Yes.
So let's say
all corporate and banking lobbying and Zionist lobbying. Now, I'm not saying that people. Advocacy groups, organic advocacy, community-run advocacy. Actually, you know what? I think campaigns should just be publicly financed. Just like they do in other countries. Like, why is it in this country we don't have
publicly
that?
financed campaign has nothing to do with lobbying. Lobbying and campaign contributions are two
I'm
entirely
talking about
different
political
topics.
donations here. Why are you being
Wait,
facetious?
whoa! You're conflating two total lobbying and like campaign contributions are two totally different topics.
Lobbying and contributions are two different types.
So then,
of
wait.
things.
So why are you complaining that I'm conflating them when you just conflated
them? They're two different types of things, but they're interconnected.
No.
Because
These are two.
If Wall Street gives you $27 million, and then the Wall Street think tank or the Wall Street lobby comes up and asks you for a favor, you're more willing to do that favor. So I mean, it's symbiotic. Okay, I don't know why you
because
choose
you
this
can
hill
have
to die on.
You can,
it's very stupid.
It's not about a hill to die on. I asked. You're saying we should publicly fund elections. That has nothing to do with lobbying. You can still have lobbying when elections are publicly
funded. It does have something
funded.
to do with political donations. Okay, but anyway.
All right, let me read these and we'll
shit.
do another segment and then I'll let you guys go if you want. I mean, we can say however long you want, but Cherry all right, it's up to you guys. Cherry Phosphate says Ted Wang should debate Destiny. I mean, hey, I like entertainment, so I'm not against that.
Debate Weinstein with him.
Harold Silvatici says, how did Ethan Ralph know it's repatriations concerning money and press? Well, actually, contrary to popular belief, I'm not an idiot. So subtle energy over 9 subtle energy over 9,000 says 26% for, 27% against, 46% undecided. Hashtag media biased. Justin KG says 46% undecided, but both parties support Israel 100%. Arcade Outpost says there's not a lot most people wouldn't do for 27 million. Harold Silvatici says donations are to, quote, provide resources for them, question. Then he says to Eric, how do you stop AstroTurf campaigns?
Yeah, well, that's a big problem in a plutocracy like America. You just can't. I mean, the one advantage that we've had in the 2016 election is that small donations blew up because of more campaigning done over the internet, because you see the Jewish-run media will block candidates they don't like. They'll attack them. They'll smear them. And so people used to be able to campaign directly, bring the message to the people on the internet. That's how Donald Trump was able to win by a narrow margin. But yeah, AstroTurf campaigns it's just how America works right now. And that's why we have such a crisis of democracy where we keep voting for things. We voted for Donald Trump. He won the election to stop immigration, and it simply hasn't happened. And that is a problem. Okay. That's unresponsive government. Donald Trump wanted to confirm Chris Kobach or the other guy, Cuccinelli. And he couldn't confirm them because the Senate Republicans won't confirm them. The Senate Republicans won't confirm them because their donors don't want an immigration hardliner in the government. So this is a big problem, okay?
All right,
wait, why I'm just curious, why didn't the Jews support Bernie Sanders?
I mean, before I answer that, let me just say one thing, Destiny. The problem people like you have, the reason why you will always lose a debate with an anti-Semite, is because you don't accurately actually fight what we say. Like, it's not to say every single Jew all over the place is involved in a conspiracy.
Only the ones selectively that fit your conspiracy the best. I know, bro.
No, it's just about people using money in a way that is a clear pattern. Okay, like if I see two billionaires that are the top donors to the Republicans and the Democrats who are Israel hawks, both of them are, and then I see the Republicans and the Democrats become Israel hawks, that's a pattern, right?
Isn't Bernie more open borders than Biden? Why wouldn't they throw a bunch of money at Bernie?
Well, that's true, but the problem is Biden is he has a pretty shitty immigration policy, actually. Like Bernie's is just insane, and actually probably helped
so why don't
the
they support
election.
Bernie if like money is so easy? Like Biden spent 15,000 in some of these states.
I'll tell you, it's actually quite interesting the relationship they have to Bernie. So the media doesn't hate Bernie personally. They don't like some of his policies, like Medicare for all. They don't like the Jews. I'm saying they don't like the wealth tax idea because, of course, if you tax Wall Street, how are all these Jewish donors going to be able to have the money to buy politicians? How are they going to be able to influence various things with their think tanks? How are they going to be able to use their money in nefarious ways, which they do? So that's true about Bernie and immigration. But the thing is, if you look at Jewish statistics, Jewish voters, they didn't like Bernie because they don't like his supporters. They see Bernie as a destabilizing force because his supporters represented a form of white populism. Okay, it was at least in 2016. In 2020, he lost the election because he lost the white populist
Bernie literally
energy.
led with support with Hispanics. What do you mean by this?
Sure, but that's because he raised a lot of money. He outspent every other candidate in Nevada, for example, in Spanish language ads by a lot, actually. I think it was like $8 million.
Yeah, but other places where he outspent, he lost hard with Hispanics against Biden.
So
I mean,
so you're saying that, okay, here's the thing. The point is, so which point are you making? Are you making that he won the Hispanic vote, or are you making the point that he didn't win the Hispanic?
I'm saying that he had before all of the elections started to roll around, he had massive support among Hispanics. But you're telling me that he was unpopular with Jews because he was had white populism or whatever. It didn't seem like his populism was very racialized, or where did that idea come from?
Well, that's not what the Jews in 2016 thought. That's where the term Bernie Bro. If you look at the origins of the term Bernie Bro, it was created by a Jew named Robinson Meyer in 2015, where he saw all these kind of very, very white audiences coming out for Bernie's kind of socialist, revolutionary, anti-establishment message. Now, if you pay attention on how the media covers Bernie Sanders, you'll see that they don't usually attack him personally like they do with Trump. What they do instead is they attack his followers. Remember, the big controversy before Bernie was beaten in the primary was, look at the toxic Bernie bros, or look at how these sexist, misogynistic, and even racist Bernie bros are operating and talking about people. And Bernie actually came out and he condemned his own supporters. So,
I thought the term Bernie Bro was inspired by the term Obama Boys. That didn't just originate with Bernie Bro. I thought that was a Hillary campaign thing.
No, it was invented by a guy named Robinson Meyer in a 2015 article in The Atlantic, where he specifically describes Bernie Bro as white and male in a negative way. He personifies them as that.
Okay.
And he says they're white men.
This guy that's doing it as a Jew
is racism and all this kind of shit.
And this guy that's doing it as a Jew is representing Jewish interests when he does it here, right?
I'm saying the pattern, okay? There's a pattern that Jewish people tend to dislike white people, okay?
I'm curious. How do you reconcile the fact that Jews have been out marrying more and more and more? If that's the case, if they don't like that, Jewish women,
are they out marrying? Because there's a difference. Let me explain that very carefully to you. So Jews have a hive. It's called Israel. Okay, the birth rate in Israel is the highest in the industrialized world. There's 3 with atheist couples, not secular atheist Jews, and 6 or 7 with religious Jews. So they're pumping the Jewish population has actually grown significantly in the last 20 years. So the whole idea of out marriage, who are they out marrying? Jared Kushner out marrying the Trumps. Guess what? A Jew is going to take all of that Trump fortune one day. How about a Jew marrying into the Clintons?
Wait, so how many times can you marry out before you're not considered a Jew anymore? Let's say that you're Jewish and then you marry and then they have a kid and then that person marries a non-Jew. Do you still consider that person a Jew?
They marry wealthy and elite Gentiles, and they use their power, fortune, and name to later for their own interests. Because a person who's half Jewish is more likely to be pro-Israel, to be anti-white, and to be a member of a Jewish community or loyal to the Jewish community than a person who's 0% Jewish. That's not even up for debate.
Well, yeah, I'm just curious if like the Jew gene, is that like dominant or recessive, or how? I'm just...
Well, the way they typically do it is they outmarry for 1 or 2 generations, and then they repurify their blood. I mean, there's no hard science on this.
Yeah, wait, well, I'm curious. What does that mean? Purify your blood? Like, do you genetically modify your baby to only carry the Jewish genes? Is this like solid snake and liquid snake, or?
We can. I'm admittedly, when it comes to like some of this stuff, I'm admittedly out of my depth, and so are you. What I'm saying though is that when Jews outmarry, they outmarry usually elite Gentiles. Not, and of course, it's not 100% of the time.
Do you think it's just more reasonable to say that like wealthy people tend to marry other wealthy people? Like, don't you think that's a little bit easier to say than to try to draw this weird conspiratorial Jewish marrying rich people to recapture the wealth through purification of their Jewish blood later?
When a member of the Chabad Lubavitch, like Jared Kushner, I don't know if you know the philosophy of the Chabad Lubavitch, they don't even consider Goyim to be human. So if Jared Kushner, a loyal member of the Chabad Lubavitch, will make an exception for Donald Trump's daughter and potentially inherit Donald Trump's billions, even though he's a billionaire already, you can't possibly dismiss that, because usually when rich families marry one another, it's seen almost like a royal wedding, right?
Well, I'm just curious, is there like, what is this conversation like with your dad when he's like, I'm sorry, son, it's time to repurify the Jewish bloodline. Like, you have to find a Jewish wife, and she can't be like impure.
I don't know the actual internal dynamics.
It's like a bar
I'm just
mitzvah
saying
thing?
that the Jewish population in the world is growing. So, you know,
it's grown from like, I think from Israel.
Herring.
It's grown from like 5 million to like 8 million, but okay.
But it's still growing. So the outmarriage thing is not an existential problem for them.
Okay. It just seems weird for people that are like obsessed with like the purity of their fucking Jewish genes or whatever. But okay, I don't know. It's just interesting to hear.
Jews are nuanced thinkers. Like they understand as a minority that they have to make some sacrifices, and some exceptions in many cases. But, you know, if you or I, Destiny, try to go to a synagogue and say, I want to convert to Judaism, I want you to try that someday, Destiny, the rabbi will say no. But if a Trump says, I want to convert to Judaism to marry into Chabad Lubavitch, then suddenly the rabbi says yes. So you got to ask your local rabbi why that is, Destiny. Okay? That's not something I can answer. I don't know what the exact dynamics are.
I'm willing to bet
there
are probably a lot of
marry elite.
Sure,
it's in your interest to marry into elite. You know, look at, for example, the Spanish royals. The Spanish royals actually intermarried, even though they discouraged Spaniards from marrying Indians, which is true. The casta system. They did. The royals actually have the same distant ancestry from the Aztec emperor. Okay, so this is kind of what elites do, and it's true that all elites do it to some extent. But with Jews, it's especially interesting because they still retain their ethnocentrism. The Trumps do not. That's the distinction. Jews retain.
Well, they retain it in like your weird definition of whatever the fuck repurifying your bloodline means. I don't know how you even possibly. I don't know. That would work, but...
Like I said, I'm not an expert in how Jews do this. Or
I mean, it sounds like of all the things you brought up, this is the thing you know the most about. So it's kind of surprising that you wouldn't know like how you go about repurifying the Jewish bloodline after like you've been marrying out of your group for longer and longer.
What they see it is how, you know, if the way they would see it is that after several generations they have minuscule amounts of Gentile blood. But the Chabad Lubavitch is a highly racialist organization. They do not consider Jews to be just a religion. They are highly racial. And they do not accept Gentiles as converts. Go call your local Chabad Lubavitch and say, I'm a goy and I want to convert to your sect. They will tell you to fuck off. Okay,
sure.
All right.
Anyway,
so let's do one more segment, even though that was basically the segment that I thought. Anyway, let me read these. One more topic. I'll let both you guys go. Let's see. John says, why does Stryker mix stupid shit with smart shit? Static says it's only $27 million, bro. Studio IKN says, will we ever get another Destiny versus Medicare? I don't know. Tyrone88 says Jimmy Chang plans on streaming again. King Porgy says, what's an Obama boy? Excuse me, that's new to me. Harold Silvatiti says Ethan Ralph is a serious political/economic analyst masquerading as a good old gamer boy. Prove me wrong. Arcade Outpost says 5 million to 8 million, you say? Ted Wang says neo-Nazis are drunken, low IQ nerds. Bring in Nick. All right, now let's do the final segment. Whatever topic you guys want to do it on.
Let's finish this off with a topic I know Destiny's been reading a lot about, because someone actually sent me a clip, Destiny, of you said you were talking about Richard Evans lying about Hitler and the Holocaust and Hitler and World War II and things like that. You were brushing up on that. I'm sure you're very studious.
Not very serious. I just learned through that trial that there's no reason to ever talk about people that try to lie about what's in the archives, because people go to great lengths to misrepresent what exists there. That's a book that I recommend to everybody to read, by the way. It's called Lying About Hitler. It's by John Evans. He's the expert witness historian.
Richard Evans,
yeah. He's the expert witness historian that was brought in to testify basically against David Irving or whatever about all of his misrepresentations of stuff related to Hitler and his existence.
So you read the book, yeah?
Yeah.
You read the book? Okay. So there's a part in that book, because of course, David Irving, there's a lot to talk about David Irving, but I don't want to get too into it, but I will say this. Many historians, when that trial was happening, were saying that their work would not be able to survive that kind of scrutiny. Remember, they paid millions of dollars for top-tier researchers to look through every single thing he's ever written and find little things like, oh, you didn't interpret this right. So, but the problem is, though, is that the judge in the David Irving case actually said that there are still significant questions about the Holocaust. And in retrospect, Richard Evans's book hasn't aged that well. So there's a part in Richard Evans's book where he declares that Majdanek is a homicide gas chamber camp. Remember, this camp, Majdanek, is. Are you familiar with this?
Nope.
Okay. So
I am familiar with the statements you've made thus far, though, and I know that both of them are false. But you can go on.
Majdanek was actually the first. It was the first Holocaust concentration camp. And what I mean by that is that it was the first one that the Soviets liberated, quote, liberated. And they found a bunch of empty cans of Zyklon B and a bunch of showers and stuff. And they said, we believe that Jews were gassed here in mass. The numbers are actually quite astonishing. They said originally that at Majdanek, 1.5 million people were gassed, killed by Nazi extermination chambers. So now, 2020, Destiny. Do you think that the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum is a good source, like a source you can believe?
In regards to what?
In regards to Holocaust history.
Sure, probably reasonably so. Yeah.
Yeah. They've declared, they have a little footnote on their page about the death camps, where they say that actually, not only did 1.5 million people not die there, 1.3 million, I'm sorry. This is a number, by the way, invented by a Jew named Lucy Davidovitz, who took it from Soviet propaganda. But not only is this number bullshit, the real number is actually, according to the Majdanek Museum now, 78,000. But there were no homicidal gas chambers at Majdanek. So doesn't that kind of, let's say, beg the question as to whether, if for decades they held that Majdanek was an extermination camp, it was the first one the Soviets used in their propaganda. Doesn't that bring up questions about the other camps where there's no evidence of any killings or with gas chambers?
I don't know the specific.
And it also,
hold on. Let's chill. Hold on. Wait. Come on. You just got to do JQ shit for like 2 hours. Okay. So let's go through some of the things you said. So Richard Evans specifically addresses that quote that you used, where a lot of people said that researchers were afraid that their own research couldn't survive the scrutiny that Irving's research went under. Now, there are a lot of general historians that read some of the footnotes of the trial that didn't follow the trial specifically that made statements like that, but Evans very carefully dissects every single one of these statements documents and absolutely blows it the fuck out of the water. The problem wasn't that Irving accidentally mistranslated or accidentally misrepresented something once or twice. The problem was that he consistently overestimated in areas where it benefited Hitler and underestimated in areas where it benefited Hitler, and that was a pattern that went through constantly. That was an undercurrent of all of his work. He would consistently recognize documents like it's like TB-84 or whatever that everybody knew was a fraud, that he even initially said was a fraud, and then 20 years later was still citing it as being true. He consistently mistranslated things that were favorable to Hitler. He consistently ignored some documents that were inconvenient. He overestimates things like the amount of people killed in the Dresden bombings to an atrocious manner, using very vague documents. That, like, all of this stuff was a consistent pattern in his work that showed a clear.
I think it's interesting that.
Hold on, chill. I know it's interesting that he fucking has like a daughter that's a Jew or some shit. I don't give a fuck, okay? But it is very clearly all laid out in all the court transcripts. Well, because you're interrupting me after you just talked like some random conspiracy shit for like 10 fucking minutes, okay? So he very consistently goes through and points out in all of the parts where Irving deliberately and with clear malice mistranslates passages to be favorable towards Hitler or cites things from the archives that are very clearly not very reliable in order to try to make claims that nobody agrees with. So this idea that all research is just as easy to scrutinize as Irving's, Evans very clearly specifically denies it in a book and gives a compelling reason to believe so. The idea that the judge said that there are major issues that are unresolved with respect to the Holocaust, that is just not true. Now, if we want to say that there are things that historians could quibble about, not only are there things that they can quibble about, they do to this day. There are plenty of historians that do a lot of work in regards to debating about what goes on exactly related to the Holocaust. Those debates are not related over whether 6 million Jews were killed or 150,000 Jews were killed. No serious historian has ever made or defended any of those extreme claims made by revisionists that, one, don't engage with any of the current literature, and two, a lot of the time can't even fucking read German when they pretend that they go through the archives to cite things related to this stuff. All of this work in revisionist history relies on citing these documents that they hope people never check out. Half the time these footnotes lead to nowhere, or they're just footnote citing like an entire fucking book or something, and then most of the time the translations are either wrong or taken out of context. So no, the idea that the judge said that there were unresolved issues, that is a mischaracterization of what the judge said, which is why Irving lost that trial, and the idea that people's research wouldn't stand with that scrutiny, that's something that Evans himself specifically rejects as well, which is not true. The idea that like 1.3 million Jews like may have died in some, I don't know specifically the death camp that you're talking about, but I know that people have constantly tried to attack the millions of Jews that were killed in these places, and it's just laughable. Like, we have records and archives of these people. These were not like fucking countries from like fucking 12,000 BC where we have no records of any of these people. The idea that like magically 5 million
record
people,
of Hitler giving any orders for it. That's funny.
Yeah, maybe not a written one, but the idea that all of this was happening under Hitler's nose, when Hitler himself specifically ordered, when Hitler himself because it was a very clear policy that they had to not give those specific orders, but commanders that met with Hitler.
Conspiracy theorist now? Who's a conspiracy theorist now?
Probably the guy that's not denying that a country that had a very racialized policy that literally invaded other countries like Austria-Hungary and literally told them to kill all of their fucking Jews. What, do you think that this was happening and Hitler had no fucking idea? Like, how naive do you think he was? Like, all of these people that were close to Hitler, like, very clearly were relaying orders that they were given from him directly.
Yeah, then there's no. You say, oh, we have all the documents, and there's not a single fucking document to say that Hitler gave any orders like that. Even though they have documents, the Nazi archives, if you're familiar with them, are extremely meticulous. Germans are very meticulous.
Meticulous enough to also not leave a literal written order. It's just not true. Everything you're saying is just completely not true.
Okay.
By definition, Nazis did not give explicit commands saying murder the Jews.
Let me answer.
Let him get it. Go ahead.
You know, I'm not someone who has been paid for a year millions of dollars to pour over Mr. Evans's book attacking David Irving.
Wait, do you think I'm paid? Wait, are you claiming?
Why don't you let me finish?
Wait, did you just claim that I'm being paid to go over Evan's book?
No, I'm not saying that. Shut up.
Wait, what was the implication there?
The implication is this. Let me finish. In his book, he says that hundreds of thousands of people were killed in homicidal gas chambers in a Polish concentration camp called Majdanek. Now, the Yad Vashem, the U.S. Holocaust Museum, say that actually no one was killed with gas at Majdanek. So if you want to talk about oversight, historical oversight, if you assert that all these people unfathomable amounts of people were killed with poison gas in a camp. And then 20 years later, people say, actually, this never happened. And you're telling me that Richard Evans is like this fucking, absolute truth of history. You got to question that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that a lot of the David Irving being an unreliable historian only happened after he wrote his book, said that his publishing company, Hitler's War, said, you got to tack something on about the Holocaust. David Irving said, well, I've poured through the archives. David Irving speaks like 4 or 5 languages, by the way. And by the way, I understand he's claims to change his opinion here and there. That's besides the point. I'm talking about this specific instance. David Irving poured through the archives while writing the book and said, I found no archive proof that there was a plan for the systematic extermination with poison gas of 6 million Jews. There's no proof of that. There's no orders. I mean, if you were to put this up in a fair court, not Nuremberg, but a fair court, it would get thrown out for lack of evidence. It's like accusing someone of murder.
You realize that he literally tried to sue for libel in the most favorable court he could. There's a reason why he waited for it to happen, for that book to be published in the UK.
Hold on, can I finish?
Sure. I mean, what you said so far is just wrong.
Let's be fair. Let's be fair to David Irving in his trial. David Irving represented himself. Okay. He didn't have the money to actually hire solicitors and people like that. Deborah Lipstadt got millions, I'm talking millions of dollars, to hire the best lawyers, the best researchers in Britain.
Wait, whose fault is
the reason that okay?
Wait, no. Whose fault is that? No. Who is responsible for this trial?
I understand. I'm not saying he's not, but what I'm saying is the point of the trial wasn't even to win the libel lawsuit. The point of the trial was to put the Holocaust on trial. Because remember, the only thing the judge, I believe his name is Judge Gray, the only thing he found was that the thing they definitively proved in the eyes of the judge was that David Irving did have some prejudice against Jews. That's what they claimed. They definitively proved, and they did attack. But the problem is,
wait a second. I'm just in terms of what you said. So the point of this trial was to put the Holocaust on trial. Whose point was that?
Yes, that was David Irving. He used the libel because you can't start a lawsuit against someone to fight the Holocaust.
Yeah, but why would he cry? Why would you use the excuse? Why would you use the excuse that he couldn't afford a lawyer when he's the one that brought the suit up?
I'm not saying it's an excuse. I'm saying that if you have millions of dollars to hire the best legal team in the country and someone is defending themselves in court, who's going to win that trial? I mean, you can be the most.
He wasn't defending. He wasn't defending himself.
No, you can be the most innocent man in the world, and if you're in a court and you don't have a lawyer, you're fucked.
It's so crazy how many people just miss this. And it's funny. The reason why you don't understand this is because he got crushed so hard. He was the plaintiff in that case. He wasn't the defendant. So he can't. No. So you can't say, well, they had so much money for lawyers. He's the one that brought the suit. Like,
do you know why? Do you understand why?
Yeah, because he thought he could win because he thought the UK courts would be more favorable to him than America. Yeah, exactly. That's the stated reason. Because he thought, yes, it is.
Hold on. The reason he did it, let me explain this very carefully. The reason he did it was because Deborah Lipstadt was publishing books calling him an anti-Semite and a Holocaust denier.
Wrong. She had that as a passage of a book that sold less than like 10,000 copies.
I understand, and that was
Irving has a huge history.
Can I finish?
Dude, you're just making shit up. No, I can't let you because this is what you guys do. You're trying to present Irving in such a pathetic light. It's such bullshit.
I don't care. I don't have a good or bad opinion about Irving personally. He's not my best buddy or anything. I'm just telling you what happened. Let me just finish, and then you can say what you want. The point of the case. Again, you're making this about David Irving. I want to talk about the actual facts in the Holocaust. I don't care about David Irving or who he married or who he has kids with. That's for fucking women. Okay, you can fucking debate that with other women if you want. What I'm saying is that the point of the lawsuit was Deborah Lipstadt was calling him names and was saying that he's a liar and that he's a liar motivated by anti-Semitism. But she would refuse to have a discussion with him where he would put his facts against hers. She had a specific no platform policy for Holocaust revisionists, which you can agree or disagree with. So he saw it as clever, probably a bad idea in retrospect. I agree with you. He thought it'd be clever to say, I'm going to force Deborah Lipstadt to debate me. And she can bring all of her holo-hoaxers to the fucking court, and I will destroy their points, which he actually did. There's a very famous quote that came out of that. No holes, no Holocaust. When he questioned the mechanism, questioned the top Holocaust historian on the mechanism of how according to the blueprints that he found, the original blueprints of Auschwitz gas chambers, how it was possible for them to feed the gas pellets and how they were able to do this when the blueprints did not support the assertion of Holocaust affirmers, of Holocaust conspiracy theorists. How did this work? There's engineering involved in that is physically impossible, which is why today, increasingly, you can say revisionists don't matter, but the only reason they gave up on Majdanek is because revisionists kept pushing it.
Okay, so real quick, because you made like 20 claims. I can't just let you rant. I can't let you just like rant past a whole bunch of bullshit.
That the Holocaust gas chamber that they show you at Auschwitz won. The only reason they admitted that it's a phony for tourists is because Robert Farrison exposed this in L'Express in the 1970s. Okay, so you can dismiss Holocaust. Sure, they're personally attacked. Holocaust revisionists, when they were in their heyday in the 1970s and 80s, were beaten. Their offices were firebombed. There was assassination attempts. The Mossad put a car bomb outside of someone's house. Clearly, there was something they didn't want people to hear.
Gotcha. So every single time in this trial, when Irving was forced to defend some contention that he made in his book, he had to walk back from it every single time. When he brought up the idea that nobody was actually driven out in a van and gassed, when Evans pushed him on it, every single time he was pushed on one of these issues, he had to walk back from it and concede that he was absolutely full of shit. When you try to bring up these little weird facts about the blueprints not fitting, about the idea that the holes couldn't actually fit enough people in it, all of this was bullshit napkin math that not only had Evans done, he walked back from when he was pushed consistently. And in terms of what the judge found, the judge literally said that Irving had his own ideological reasons for persistently and deliberately misrepresenting and manipulating historical evidence related to Hitler.
Deborah
Lipstadt? Why are we picking? You just talked for 20 minutes. We just talked for 20 minutes. Calm down, buddy. The judge also said that he found that Irving was an active Holocaust denier, that he was anti-Semitic and racist, and that he associated with right-wing extremists. This was doled out over hundreds and hundreds of hours of in-court testimony. All of it is available. You can read the book. You can go over the testimony. Irving fucking embarrassed himself.
Irving's decision where he said there are serious questions about the Holocaust that remain open.
Sure, that's fine. No, but this is the thing that you Holocaust revisionists do. Just because there are serious questions where things are open doesn't mean that they're willing to say, oh yeah, maybe only 150,000 Jews died, not 6 million. Of course there are serious questions. Not only are there serious questions still open it, actual historians, real historians, not hacks like Irving, actually have active debates about this all the time.
Why was David Irving a highly respected historian before he wrote?
He wasn't. He was only a highly respected historian by people that did a general overview of his work and never actually followed the footnotes. It's one of the things that Evans did that he got so much praise for in the trial.
No one even knew Dresden happened.
When you actually follow the footnotes and you actually look at where his sources read to, what you find out is that Evans is a massive fucking fraud. So if you look, and it's funny because at the end of the book, all of these historians that you would be so excited to cite actually do come out and say like, well, Evans does good work. You know, the military history or whatever of Germany, he did good work here. But when you actually find people that specialize in that area, people that actually speak German and visited the archives in Moscow, in Washington, in Paris, in Berlin, and actually did the research, will all come out and unanimously say Irving is a fucking hack, and none of the work that he did holds up to any type of critical analysis whatsoever. You can always find generalists that will praise the work of other generalists. How many generalists have come out in favor of, say, guns, germs, and steel? But when then you look at people that actually have like specific education in an area, come out and are critical of it. Like the fact that you would even pretend that you could spin any part of Irving's history in work or any part of that trial in a favorable light shows that you were either completely unwilling to engage with what actually happened or you're being intentionally dishonest about it. Irving had to retreat from every single major claim that he made in that book.
Yeah, you probably watched the movie. I don't think he actually... Let me just say this, okay?
I'm sorry. Hold on. Wait, did you actually read the book?
Yes, I did. I've read the book twice.
So tell me,
actually.
tell me
Evans
which
book,
parts do you feel like I'm misrepresenting? It's interesting that you
I
say
already
it.
told you. I told you that.
Tell me again.
No, what I didn't say that you're misrepresenting it. I'm saying that there are gaping problems with Evans's assertions in that book.
What kind of gaping problems?
I explained this already.
No. Tell me what kind of gaping problems Irving had. What do you think are his problems?
Irving or Evans?
Irving.
I even think. I mean, Irving. I'm not going to talk about him personally, but I'm saying that what the judge found, what Judge Gray found in the Irving trial, was that David Irving was not libeled. It's not that the Holocaust, like the whole idea, like this wasn't in the trial, but the whole idea that David Irving has personal political motives, and he may, but somehow Deborah Lipstadt, who is a hardline Zionist, very active in the Jewish community, has connections with all the big Jews in Hollywood, like Steven Spielberg, who helped finance her lawsuit. Somehow Deborah Lipstadt, the Holocaust affirmer, has no personal political motive, that people that write things affirming lies about the Holocaust.
This had nothing, dude. No. You can't pivot to try to cry about Jewishness here. You always try to appeal to Jews and special interests. This was a court case that a judge evaluated that Irving himself brought suit to. You don't get to run and hide and cry about the conspiracy theories because you don't like how fucking destroyed he got in court, dude. But whatever her associations are not relevant to the court case. Full stop. End of discussion. You can't bring up her associations to try to save Irving's disastrous fucking history in writing or his disastrous fucking case in court.
What I'm saying is that David Irving was a highly, highly, highly respected historian, no matter what your opinions are or what the merits of his work are.
That's just not true. And this is why I know you didn't read the book, because Evans literally goes through at the end.
Sold millions of copies of his books.
So are you saying Sam Harris is a highly respected fucking philosopher now because he sold millions of copies on the moral landscape? Right. Like, what do you mean, dude? Come on, you're going to tell me that selling lots of copies of a book makes you a respected historian?
I would just say, people look up Robert Farrison. If you're listening, look up the very first Holocaust.
And I would say, go ahead and read the book Lying About Hitler. You can see how these guys literally mistranslate German documents, how they literally lie about what the words say, how they literally try to weasel out of how the fact that this guy's trying to say the judge didn't give like an actual fucking opinion on this, when the judge literally said, and I quote, "It is my conclusion that no objective, fair-minded historian would have serious cause to doubt that there were gas chambers at Auschwitz and that they were operated on a substantial scale to kill hundreds of thousands of Jews." Like, the idea that you're going to sit here and pretend.
Last thing before I go. Okay. Last thing. Just really
No, wait, we're going to do final statements, but yeah, go ahead.
Last thing about this topic, okay?
Okay.
If you want to see a liar, look up Deborah Lipstadt. Okay, go on her website. Right. There's after Holocaust revisionists exposed that the gas chamber they show to tourists at Auschwitz is a fake. After this was exposed, and they admitted to it many years in the 80s. They admitted that it was fake. Deborah Lipstadt said, "It's not fake, it's symbolic." So the point is that this was constructed after the war. So the point I'm making here, just to end it, is that the Holocaust affirmers, the Holocaust conspiracy theorists, they support putting so-called Holocaust deniers in prison. They support ruining their lives. They support physical violence against them in many cases. They support all of this, but it doesn't stop them from constantly giving ground. At this point, there's increasing pressure to start letting go of the idea of gas chambers in general in mainstream history. The numbers of 6 million are being reduced by mainstream Jewish historians as we speak. There's a book in 2016 that did this by a Jewish historian. In fact, now they're quickly and rapidly, and David Irving actually is doing this too, by the way, which is kind of shady. They're retrenching, they're pulling back the front line. Now the main claim they're making is that people were gassed in vans in the so-called Reinhard camps. This is like basically their last bastion of Holocaust stuff. This is happening while we debate this. They're losing ground like crazy. People aren't believing it anymore, and this is why they have to give ground. I mean, they were holding that people were being turned into lampshades and soap until the Yad Vashem very recently admitted they weren't. So, this is the point. And the people that exposed that first, by the way, those were revisionists that exposed that it was fake. So I'm sorry, Destiny. Anyway. Let's go.
Yeah,
Let me
so
read
Do I get
these.
to do my closing statement? Oh, I have to just real quick.
I mean, I didn't know that was the. I mean,
Oh shit!
Okay,
Well,
yeah,
I just have to
yeah.
respond real quick because this is everything he
Okay.
said is just
All
not
right.
true. The idea that
Go
there are
ahead.
serious debates in academic communities, like dramatically revising down the number of Jews that were killed in gas chambers, it's just not true. Like, can you find a pop history book every now and then, like written by a guy that has zero engagement with any of the actual historical literature, or a guy that has no idea how to actually engage with history? Yeah, I'm sure we can find pop books written about fucking literally anything, about history, about wars, about philosophy. Like tons of people do this all the time. In the actual academic communities where these debates happen, yeah, people quibble over what are the exact numbers of people killed in certain areas, how were these orders issued, how were they carried out, but there are no mainstream contentions about the idea that 6 million Jews were killed, or that hundreds of thousands of people were killed across different death camps in different types of gas chambers. And even this very specific idea that you bring up about people being gassed in vans, that was something that Irving had originally written about that he completely and totally retreated from in the trial. And the text of him actually doing that is included in the final chapter of the book, where he's being questioned about it and eventually concedes entirely to that point, and then concedes that he lied about it and continued to lie about it in his book, past the point of knowing that it wasn't true. So pretty much every single thing you just said about how there are widespread historian consensus saying that, like, oh, well, they're actually dramatically revising the numbers and gas numbers, it's all complete bullshit. There are a couple of pop history books written by people that aren't taken seriously in historical communities, that have no formal historical training, and that don't engage critically with any historians whatsoever.
The man who recently in 2016 revised the number down from 6 million to 3 to 4 million is which is still a big number. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying that this is a slow process. That's how history against time and against the grain works. I'm actually trained. I'm actually a relatively trained historian.
What does that mean?
I went to school for it. So
like what, you're like an undergrad in history, or what?
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm a historian per se, but I did briefly work in the industry and so on. But the point
doing
is,
what?
I'm not going to say too much about
You're
it.
lying 100%, but go ahead.
So,
God.
Okay. So anyway, David Cesarini, who's a British historian who specializes in Jewish history, especially the Holocaust. That's in his biography. That is the man who in 2016 released the book revising the numbers down, significantly, because going down from 6 million to 3 or 4 million is significant. He doesn't say the number, but that's what he adds it up to. So this man, and by the way, he passed away, but you can look him up, David Cesarini. This is his Magnus. He's won National Jewish Book Awards for history. So if you're not going to take this man's word for it, no one's word is good enough for you, Destiny. So anyway, let's. All
right, let me read these. Who started off? Does anybody remember? Because I don't. Who had the first opening statement? I don't know. Just let me read these, and then we'll give each person the finale. By the way, thank you guys for staying so long. Camper, and by the way, I completely. Usually, it's a trademark for me to be mostly hands off, but I just almost completely went hands off for this and just let you guys go at it. I think it was pretty good, actually. Camper 1260 says, "Bring on Ted Wang." I don't actually see Wang, and we're not going to get to any callers, to be quite real with you guys. Scrub Lord Man says, "Why is Rich Evans writing about the Holocaust?" Camper 1260 says, "Wang." And then he says, "This is now a Wang stream." Ted Wang himself says, "Talk about Rich Evans' view on Star Trek Picard." Camper 1260 says, "Ted Wang is winning this debate." Eddie Brob 12 says, David Cole Steins' research refutes Holocaust numbers. Arcade Outpost says, "There are names of supposed killed that were alive." Harold Silvatici says, "A certain chemical compound is a fumigant never put through pipes." Ted Wang says, "Why Rich Evans doesn't like Picard is exciting." Then Ted Wang says, "David Irving's view on Star Trek Picard, please." Harold Silvatici says, "Certain chambers would use CO2, much more efficient." Ted Wang says, "Which is better, the Holocaust or Star Trek Picard?" Camper 1260 says, "We want to hear what Ted Wang has to say." Let's see. Camper 1260 then says, "Where's Wang?" Camper 1260 says, "Where's Jim Object?" Herbert Silvatici says, World War II historians rely on Irving's archivism. Arcade Outpost says, "Curator of Auschwitz claims recreations on camera." Camper 1260 says, "Historian equals fed." Eddie User says, "Imagine losing to a beta cuck." Wes the Great says, "They need to mass produce masks and sanitizer." Let me look through here on the stream elements. Let's see.
Can you real quick? What was this book by Cicerini where he massively revised down the numbers? I can't find anything
It's
about
called, hold on, let me see. Final Solution: The Fate of the Jews, 1933 to 1949.
All right.
And you're
Twig
telling me
says,
that in this book, he says that far fewer than 6 million Jews were killed.
Yes.
I literally
Twig
can't
sa-
find that anywhere. But sorry, go ahead.
Twig says, ask Destiny about his penchant for, I don't know, incest, basically, whatever. If you want to answer that, yeah. I don't know. That's up to you. We've talked about incest with you.
I don't want to know about your personal life. I don't want to.
Nah, it's more of a philosophical discussion, quote unquote. We had this in, what was it, December, maybe January?
I'm sorry, yeah, real quick before we do more. So I'm looking this up. This guy never said that. You just completely fabricated that. David Cicerini never downgraded how many Jews were killed. Like, there's nothing on the internet about this at all.
Well,
Like,
let's okay, buy the book.
I'm not gonna buy a whole book and fucking read it right now for you. Like, if he was dramatically downgrading
an
it,
asshole.
if he would dramatically downgraded that number, I should be able to find this instantly.
Book, why are you telling me a book I read isn't true?
Because it doesn't exist on the internet. This number doesn't exist. You're lying. You're just lying. Like you have about almost every single source you've brought up this debate. Like people, like I see multiple people reviewing the book that mention the 6 million number. None of them seem to bring up that apparently he's got this dramatic revision downwards. This is like I wish that I knew every fact you were bringing. Okay, which page do I need to look at? Which page?
Let me. I actually have notes on this if you'd like to see them.
Sure. Yeah. Which page? Yeah. Tell me.
1.5 million Jews were shot on the Eastern Front, according to Cicerini. About 900 to 960,000 were killed at Auschwitz. Presumably, he implies it's gas chambers. And 1.7 were killed in the Action Reinhardt camps, and then another about 100,000 at Chelmno.
Okay,
it's significantly less than.
So
6
you
million.
went through the book and you did your own napkin math to figure out what you think he would say was the total number of Jews killed.
All right, man.
That's
all
what. Okay, just making sure. That's what you did. Okay, so he didn't actually
Pirate
dramatically
it.
revise anything. You're doing
pirate the book.
Nazi napkin math. Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, go pirate the
Blue
book
Tank-
and tell me what you think.
I'm not gonna read a
Blue
whole
Tank-
fucking book to deal with some dumbass assertion that's very clearly not true because nobody anywhere is fucking talking about it.
Right. Well, even if I convince you fully, Destiny, that what I'm saying is true, you're still not going to admit it because you're a fucking coward and you make a living from lying to people about neoliberalism and all these crap, because that's why Jews let you do your thing, man.
Yeah, that's why the Jews let me do. That's why Bezos himself is giving me a pat on the back for all my hard work. I think the thing is, I think the funny thing is that like if anybody is the coward, it's actually you. Like you're too scared to take a hard look in the mirror to figure out what we need to do to fix society, and instead it's easier to just blame the Jewish fucking boogeyman, dude. Every one of you conspiracy theorists is the same way. You're too lazy to do any of the actual hard work into figuring out how can we make a better society, how can I improve my life. Instead, you just want to find one fucking boogeyman to blame everything on because you're too much of a fucking coward to look in the mirror and figure out what you can do to fix yourself. Like exactly, like this is 100% what it is. Like this idea that a bunch of fucking white people will get together and make everything better is like laughably fucking naive, dude.
Asking how the Nazis killed 6 million Jews in a systematic fashion and not a single actual written order exists to do this in a fucking very well-oiled
and the idea
military machine.
And
conspiracy
listen to you. Okay. You're telling me that this conspiracy theory exists where Jews around the world have all come together to control corporate media, control shadow banking and all of this, but you think it's unfathomable that Hitler might have had like a personal decree not to literally write on a piece of paper, I want to kill all the Jews?
Show me an autopsy of a gas Jew. Show me, is there any autopsy proving that? Show me how the math works with the crematoriums. We're seeing the most modern
I recommend you the Lying About Hitler book, and then there are a million other resources that you can read about gas chambers. Like it's all out there. Like they've even tried. Remember, I don't know how to pronounce this. The Luchter report that they tried to make in the the one they tried to make in the 60s, saying that Jews weren't actually gassed, but then when they went back and revisited it, it turns out that all of that was actually even stronger evidence that those gas chambers existed. All of this is like well researched.
The Nazi conspiracy too, right? He was part of the Nazi conspiracy.
No, he wasn't. He was just an uninformed businessman that made some like bad conclusions.
No, he was actually the number one gas chamber specialist in North America, for your information.
He wasn't a gas chamber specialist. He was a specialist in using chemicals to delouse fucking material, and he was under the false assumption. He was under. So the reason why that report was debunked.
After he came up with inconvenient.
We can talk about the reason why this report was debunked. His problem was that he assumed that the amount of this chemical that you would need to kill humans is the same amount that you would need to kill lice. That's just not true. So when they were taking apart parts of the wall and they were doing the measurements on these walls, and they were like, oh wow, look, there's far too few chemical residue on here to actually kill Jews. None of them could have been killed in here. It turns out later that when they revisited that analysis, they were like, oh well, actually, wait, the amount of chemical that you needed to kill people was actually far less. Like,
Zyklon B was used in the 1920s to delouse Mexicans on the U.S. border when they came to work on farms.
Okay, and bleach
does
is
that mean
used
6
to
million Mexicans died?
and bleach is used to clean floors. You don't think you can commit suicide with bleach? What a stupid fucking point. Are you
It's
even thinking at this point?
That's not the same thing at all. Because he. All right.
Wait, no, you're right. It's not the same thing. Just because I can use certain chemicals to do a certain purpose doesn't. I'm sure you're fucking tired. This is taking 120% of that fucking brain of yours to make up this crazy fucking bullshit. Holy fuck! You know what? I will concede one point to you. Okay, all of you fucking white nationalists always say some shit about how like even if white people don't have a higher IQ than Asians, we have a higher creative IQ. And after listening to the crazy fucking tales and lies that you spun in this debate, I'm starting to fucking believe it. Because holy shit, you are making up some crazy fucking stories, my dude.
Dude, being a jerk about it doesn't change the fact that you're fucking losing. Like, I mean, this is the facts, okay? So you can just keep saying that stuff all you want, but the problem is that you understand that you have to say these things. If not, like you're gonna suffer the same thing political dissonance in this country suffers.
Say whatever the fuck I want to say. I live in the United States of
America.
I've been saying a lot of different things over the past 10 years. It's pretty obvious you have no idea who the fuck I am, but that's okay.
You know what? If what I was saying was so stupid, why can't I use YouTube? Why can't I use Twitch? Why can't I use PayPal? Why can't people that have my opinions sell books on Amazon?
Because we live in a capitalist society. First of all, you probably could self-publish on Amazon. Literally anybody fucking does it. But as soon as we live in a capitalist society, it's literally we live in a and yet here you are on fucking DLive. Yet here you are.
They don't want people reading them. If they were as stupid as you think, they would let people read them and let them discredit themselves.
Here you are talking to fucking over 10,000 people. You've managed to find a platform regardless. Congratulations, you've done it. There's still a place for you. But yeah, I mean, if customers don't want a particular thing, it's not really that surprising that they would drive that particular thing out.
They banned Mein Kampf when it was becoming a bestseller. That's the weird part, isn't it? They banned it and then they re-released it, but only the ADL version, not the Murphy translation. This is on Amazon.com. You can look this up. It's not a conspiracy theory. So I'm banned, and you're not, because you have all the system's opinions. You just push them in the direction. You're talking about incest. Shit like that. You're just pushing the direction that the system wants us to go in.
You think incest is a popular topic that everybody wants to talk about? That's like one of my more popular fucking debate drivers.
It's not. It's not. But it is something that the elites, all this sexual liberation, liberal maximalism, that is an elite opinion, just like trannies and homosexuality and all that stuff. Right. 30 referendums shot down gay marriage doesn't mean we don't have to live with it. We absolutely do. So here's the thing, man. You have the elite opinions. You don't have the popular opinions. And the reason why they don't want people to be able to hear or read or see what I'm saying is because they know I'm right. And if people were to see it, I would change their minds. And we would actually do something, some change in this country that we desperately need. So that's why you don't get censored and I do. You get pats on the back from the system. Anyway.
Definitely. Yeah, I've never been banned by Twitch before or had anything like that, any sponsors threaten or anything like that. You're very, very, very familiar with my history, I see.
I don't remember who started. If one of you guys do remember, if not, I'll just let Stryker get the first final word, even though that was basically the final word, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, the final word is this, okay? You know, if you're a political dissident in this country, you have to suffer quite a bit, okay? There's a lot of personal cost, perhaps even you have to deal with the main premise I would have about why we need to do this is and what we should do is basically just start by expanding the 1964 Civil Rights Act and protecting white people with it, because today white people are a stateless people. They don't have the same rights as other groups do. In fact, that's almost by design. And then when you go to conservatives, their response is to try and take everyone's rights. The answer is to give whites rights, to protect free speech in this country, to protect free debate. And we simply don't have that. So, you know, I think this is something that needs to change. And I hope people will keep fighting, even if it's, you know, demoralizing or whatever in the short term, because in the end, we will win. Let me also shamelessly plug national-justice.com and TRS. So, yeah, that's my statement.
There you go. Destiny. Go ahead, sir.
I have a lot of people like trying to find the passage in this book. I just want to read a bit from this book that he just cited, saying that 6 million number didn't exist in here, or whatever. From this book, the Nazis, for historical reasons, developed an ideology that led them in 1941 to decide on the annihilation of every Jew, man, woman, or child they could lay their hands on. The only significance in that is that it is what they wanted, and had they been more successful, I would not be here to talk about it. In these thoughts, I may be influenced, I readily admit, by a revulsion from the very idea that the mass murder of nearly 6 million Jews should have any significance at all in and by itself. But of course, there is the very valid emotional objection to this, namely that it means that the death of all these people, to me, my fellow Jews, with whom most Jews feel an emotional identification just as I do, was in itself meaningless. In other words, that their suffering and death had no meaning in itself. I think it's funny that in this very book that you cite,
quickly.
Wait, hold on, no, this is my closing shit. No, this is my closing shit. Dude, you're full of shit. Literally, every fucking source that you've brought up has been a fucking lie. You went through the book. It's funny because actually, you know what? It's actually funny because you did the exact same thing that Irving himself was accused of doing. You leave a broad footnote to an entire fucking book, and you hope that nobody actually goes and investigates the source to find out that you're fucking full of shit. It's the same thing that every single one of you revisionists do. 100%.
Go to the part.
My final word. So my final word is that
gentlemen, wait.
This is my closing statement. Why is he?
I know. Yes, I agree.
So tell me shut the fuck up.
I agree.
When he's done all this fucking Nazi
just let him speak, Stryker. Let him speak.
Okay, so I mean, I think it's funny that in almost every single topic this guy's brought up, where he sees these grand conspiracies, he doesn't even know the fundamentals of how the system works. He doesn't know how art or culture works, which is surprising and funny. He doesn't know basic finance. He doesn't know basic economics. He doesn't know how campaign finance works. He's literally illiterate in almost all of these areas, yet is so fucking smart that he can point out these grand conspiracies that exist in all of these different places. I submit to you that there are a lot of problems that exist in America today, but these problems can be fixed largely within the system, that we can do things like more tax redistribution, that we can have programs like Medicare for All, that we can look at things like the negative impact of technology in our lives without feeling like we have to kick out all the fucking brown people or black people, or like we have to blame the fucking Jews on some weird grand conspiracies that people have claimed for fucking millennia have existed that never pan out to seemingly actually exist. Like this idea that all of us should band together as white people when we don't even identify that way, which in and of itself is laughable because we don't. And if you go to fucking Europe, that you fetishize so much, you find that people there don't do it as well. You've got Swedes, you've got fucking Germans, you've got British people. They don't all see themselves as some collective white people. That's a uniquely American concept, which if anything demonstrates the idea that whiteness or any of these racial groups are as fluid as you fucking want them to be. If we all became a white people today, then tomorrow we'd become blue-eyed and brown-eyed people. If we killed all the brown-eyed people, the next day we'd become blondes and fucking brunettes. I think we should focus on the real problems that exist in America today, the alienation we have from our work, the alienation that's caused by technology, and the alienation that might be caused by our horrible fucking economic policies, and focus on that rather than spreading all these baseless bullshit conspiracy theories that have zero fucking foundation in reality because we're too scared to take a look at the actual problems that impact us.
Okay, one last thing, because he called me out and he has a seemingly good
very
point.
Quickly, because technically now I have to let him respond as well. You realize that, right? But yeah, okay.
The point of the Cesarini book was not that he doesn't at the beginning. Yes, he does say 6 million. The point is to look at the specific instances where he tracks it. The number doesn't add up. It added up to 4.2 million. Okay, that's the point. Where did the other ones go? It's just like saying, oh, yeah, the Auschwitz Museum says 6 million Jews died, but then they keep changing the plaque and reducing the number of people that died there. Okay, so yes, they're going to stick to the 6 million number. I'm just saying what the point I was making is that revisionists are having an impact and they're incrementally giving ground. That's the point I'm making. I'm not saying that this book says that it still affirms 6 million, but the math, go look at the estimates of all the killings of Jews in the book. Okay, 1.5 million on the Eastern Front, 960,000 at Auschwitz, 1.7 million in the action Reinhardt camps, and then 97,000 at Kelmno. So again, look it up, do the math yourself. Yes, somehow 4.2 million adds up to 6 million in his mind, but that's just how it works.
All right, Destiny, really quickly, I have to give you a chance if you want to say something. Quick rebuttal.
I mean, it's Nazi napkin math. Like the guy in the book says 6 million. Like if he wants to go through and selectively edit out like the things that he wants, like Irving himself literally did this. So it's no surprise that he would defend Irving and then like engage in the same ahistorical practices that he does, despite claiming that he has some mysterious history training.
There we go. Destiny, Eric Stryker, thank both of you gentlemen for joining me here on the Kill Stream. I hope you guys have a good weekend and stay safe out there with the corona bullshit going around. All right. Fair enough.
Alrighty, good stuff. Are we off? Okay, I guess so. Alrighty.
All right. Well, hey, have fun, buddy.
All right, take care, buddy.
Holy shit, I got so lucky, dude. That guy stumbled into like every single topic I've been reading about over the past 6 months. Oh my god, he was so fucking unlucky. Oh my god, what the fuck? The only thing that was like kind of off the rails was like when he started the like, here's the 72 Jewish people that I know and the 52 different numbers, and it's like, holy fuck. I felt like I was debating Darth Dawkins and he was just running down like the fucking dialogue tree. But I think other than that, I think it was okay. Dude, the idea that he wanted to open with music, I couldn't believe how fucking lucky I was. Oh my god. Jesus.